Hello, Smite Draft League. Week 6 time. My name's AnthonyMalum. I'm joined by Jeeringlamb with iNooblet pushing buttons. We've got an exciting one. We've got the Seismic Shockwaves versus the Kingslayers, and with week 6 here, we're getting closer and closer to playoffs, Jeer.
As playoffs draw ever closer, we are getting one step closer to some of the most intense action. Everybody is gearing up as the season draws to a close. They start ramping it up. They really start getting interested in these games. So I think we got some good action coming.
For sure. I mean, next week, week 7, followed by the week for makeup games being week 8, and then it's time. It's playoffs. And in the Immortal division, Wild Inferno has taken a strong lead. They've pulled away consistently. But the Seismic Shockwaves are a team that's making a very late push. They found their synergy. They found what works, and it's creative plays. We saw that last week with the backdoor going correctly. So I'm really looking for more of the same from them. I'm looking for creative play, and I'm looking for heart to push them through to what could potentially be a 2 seed spot if they keep it up.
They have certainly been making waves recently, and I think you're right. They've made some really interesting improvements. They've come off a lot of victories. They've had a little bit of hardship. There's been a little bit of struggle here and there, but they're definitely making a lot of progress. And I'm really excited to see what they're able to pull out against the Kingslayers because right out the rip, first ban, getting rid of the Tiamat. They've definitely
Yeah,
learned their lesson against Xarxith.
yeah. The team of the Seismic Shockwaves are a team that does not mess around in terms of strategy and preparation, and it doesn't take too much preparation to find out that Xarxith is an absolutely insane Tiamat player. So no shock with the first ban there. Do want to point out that the jungle for Seismic Shockwaves today is a emergency sub coming up from the Divine division, would be virtually from the Divine Sunbreakers, filling in the jungle today for the Shockwaves.
That may impact the strategy a little bit, and we may see a little bit of a slowdown on the plays, especially in that early rotation as they kind of get used to each other. But Virtually has definitely been doing pretty well, at least for themselves. So I expect it shouldn't be too much trouble for them to at least get started. But if it does end up going to a game 2 and Kingstars are able to recognize those strategies, they may be able to adjust pretty well to it.
Yeah, something I'm very interested to look at is virtually has played a lot of off meta, is putting it lightly, picks in the jungle in Divine. We've seen Set jungles, we've seen Poseidon jungles, we've seen the works. I'm curious if playing up a division to Immortal, and in a very skilled Immortal set at that, it'll change, and maybe it will. Could always be a flex pick, but the first lock in for the Shockwaves is Thor.
They're going to be bringing in the Thunder pretty early. Thor is a pretty flexible character. Like you mentioned, a lot of the times you'll see a jungle, still seeing it plenty in solo, but its ability to rotate with the semi-global ultimate,
the
it
waves.
really gives some options to the team to make those team fights and rotations out of nowhere. So the other team always has to be careful about where they're warding, where they're standing. Kingslayers does certainly know how to do that, but when you're playing against somebody like Thor, who's been
win
pretty
peace
relevant
by
lately,
force.
you could see some surprise ganks come out of nowhere.
A lot of exciting matchups across the board, not just in jungle. A couple I want to point out is, I mean, first off, I want to address elephant in the room. Yes, Marticarus is back available. Just cannot take advantage of his skin currently. That's causing the invisibility bug. But banned regardless from Kingslayers. No chances today whatsoever for that, Marty. But back to what I was going to talk about. Support. HiRezHinduman versus Tatri. A really exciting role there. We've seen HiRezHinduman really start to flourish recently in the SDL after getting off to kind of a rough start in that role. And now going against Tatri, who is the defending champion in the support role for Immortal. So big there. And then Vayu and Aritti. Vayu last week went absolutely crazy on that Hachiman.
Warriors,
to battle!
I remember seeing a little bit of that action, and even just watching one team fight, you can tell. You give the Hachiman just a couple minutes of space, even if it's just one or two team fights, and you're just going to see those damage numbers fly sky high. So seeing that Hachiman already picked up the first two, probably going to be a pretty good idea to take it as early as possible because, like we've seen with Xarxith Tiamat, one of those just comfort picks, even if it's not the most meta god,
Listen to
can
my
really make
words.
or break a team.
With the Giannis lock in for the Shockwaves, I mentioned kind of in passing at the beginning that the Shockwaves are a team that seems to be they're thriving when they're thinking. That's what I would say about the Shockwaves. And with the lock in of Giannis and Thor, that's two it's both semi-global and global ultimate characters being able to get across the map at any given notice when needed. You've got an on her with you, so you're establishing that you want to fight in the lane, you want to get aggressive, and you're looking for ganks from your jungler. Do you think that this is playing into multiple facets of the game? Are they looking at early with early ganks and then maybe late game getting creative?
That may be exactly what they're going for, because when you have two characters that as soon as they hit level 5, they can just go cross an entire lane in a matter of seconds, the possibility of getting ganked from mid to duo is very, very high. So if you don't have some early wards out, as soon as they take over to level 5, you may end up finding yourself asking a question, "Hey, why are there 4 people in my lane?"
Yeah, why are there four people in my lane? And then, even potentially, de- ha- depending on how mid late game goes with how Giannis can be, Adora's been getting away with murder with that Giannis. So maybe the Kingslayers will look at that halfway point of saying, hey, why do we let that through again? The performance up to this point, I mean, it could have been worthy of the Xarxith treatment, getting rid of now three bans focused on that mid lane from the Shockwaves, and none in the mid lane unless you want to count the Marty from the Kingslayers, which allowed Adora to be comfortable. So, interesting approach from the Kingslayers in the banning phase, and a big emphasis on support
Your
with
terror
three there.
comes to
So,
an
some
end.
respect for Hindu Man today.
Well, Hinduman is a pretty well-known name, so I can't really begrudge them for paying some extra special attention there, but definitely gonna be a good idea from the Kingslayers to get rid of Kepri, because if that Giannis comes back, you're just gonna have even more trouble killing that mid laner who is already known for just being so tricky to take down, being able to portal around those walls, making it extra tricky to catch him.
That's always the key. It's how chaotic can you be as Giannis? I know in every time we see a Giannis in some of our sillier circumstances, I'm thinking staff games and the like, and special event games. It always feels like a Giannis is just kind of limit testing how much they can do using their portal combined with through space and time just to cause havoc across the map. Now with a King Arthur hover in a response to the Shiva, kind of an not I don't want to say unique solo lane matchup because we have seen Shiva quite a bit, but King Arthur is somebody who has fallen off. So while it is just hovered, how would you expect that matchup to go?
King Arthur certainly thrives, especially if you can get that early pressure and building off of that item spike. You really are playing around the timing of
For
those spikes
Camelot!
because if you get
For
boot off invaded,
Avalon!
Arthur is just going to sit in the corner and cry. Shiva, on the other hand, does have a little bit better sustain, being able to get some mana back with the ultimate Shiva Tandava. But the issue is neither of them really bully each other out the way you would expect a bully solo laner to do. But if any
Who's
of them
ready
get
to
even a
party?
single shred of pressure, they can exert it. So we may see a very explosive solo lane where we see 3 and 0 at 6 minutes, or we may see absolutely nothing at all.
A Bacchus on her dual lane. That's irritating to play against.
That's
That
fr-
feels like a lot of in your face CC.
that is a lot of pressure. There's not many dual lanes that just the two of them immediately screams, "I am jumping at you at every opportunity." Somebody like Bacchus and Anhur, that is kind of the epitome of you are literally going to be getting jumped at by multiple characters.
100%. 100%. No fun at all. And the Merlin. So three bans for Xarxith, but still a character that we've seen her perform spectacularly on, being able to get through to the hands of the Kingslayers mid laner. And my question to you, Jeer, is kind of a more broad question here. A lot of times we see target bans not always work out for teams, especially in scenarios where a god pool is as deep as Xarxith. Do you think that's going to pay here for the Shockwaves? Because a lot of great picks got through on the back of that mid lane focus. Yamoja, Hachiman, just to name a couple.
They did let a few good picks slide through, but the Seismic Shockwaves did also get some pretty solid picks. Having Thor and Giannis in the same team really enables just constant ganks if they want to do that. Having that global pressure can really enable Seismic Shockwaves to get active all around the map. The other hand is Kingslayers, they have a really good team fight. Hunbats with Yamoja, being able to drop the River's Rebuke, or even just having Shiva Tandava to keep your team healthy. Meanwhile, Merlin and Hachiman in the backline just obliterating your health bar like no tomorrow. I think it's very possible we could see either a back and forth game, or if somebody exerts their pressure in just the right way, you could crack a base open like an egg for either side.
I like it. Time to find out just how correct it'll be. Let's head into game. We'll be right back. Hello, hello, welcome back. It's time for game week 6 Immortal action. The Seismic Shockwaves versus Kingslayers. My name's AnthonyMalum, joined by Jeeringlamb. Let's get into it. Jeering, we talked in picks and bans about a million different things, but you know what we didn't discuss? We didn't discuss the fun stuff of when they get to lane. What do we expect to see? Plain and simple. I always love that question because it's a simple question, but it really does lend its way to a good idea of how the game starts. Do you expect a lot of blood? We talked about the pressure in dual lane.
It's certainly very possible we see a lot of blood, but with a Bacchus on her going into a Yamoja, that's a lot of pressure and a lot of sustain. So it could go really both ways, but in the mid lane, getting a little bit of almost blood early, but mostly just some low health bar.
Virtually able to step up with Adora and push back Axie and Xarxith. That feels great, especially being a sub up from Divine and dual lane. No surprise, up to the tower line. Nobody's gonna be shocked about that, considering the pressure coming out from the Shockwaves. And pressure and damage and the ability to gank. Those are all things that we talked about. Those are all things we need to look for, including the fact you mentioned blue buff invades being a problem for Arthur. And with a Hoombot, somebody who has a really easy time invading blue buffs, do you expect that to be a problem that the Shockwaves will have to answer for quickly?
It's definitely one of the potential problems that could come out of that early game, but if they're able to hold the line and get Thor over there to team fight, King Arthur and Thor can make a very convincing argument of, you don't want to be in my lane.
Virtually stepping over to the duo lane, but just drops a wall and steps away. The Kingslayers are a bit too pushed at their own tower line for Virtually to have a clean opening, so unfortunate there. And also, Virtually went beads over Blink, so no sneaky engages will come out from the Thor this time round. Hindu will push up the wave, while the other two at the Shockwaves go to the shield buff, so no split XP there. Little things like that do tend to make a difference, especially in a matchup like this.
Just every little bit of farm can help, especially if you tick over to level 5 a little bit early.
Xarxith in a lot of trouble. Beads already has been forced, and with the Unstable Vortex, all it needed was a basic, and Virtually finds the first blood for the Shockwaves. Xarxith will have 5 seconds to think about what went down in that mid lane. Not the start that you want on a Merlin, and certainly the start you want on a Thor. All those kills can add up quickly on a Thor and cause problem, Jeer, and considering we've mentioned it a million times, we'll mention it a million more. Name of this game will be rotations and pressure across the map. Giving first blood to a Thor is not ideal.
Yeah, when you get a Thor ahead, especially against somebody without CC immunity in their base kit like a Merlin, getting in a situation like that where the other jungler is ahead, it can be virtually impossible to really fight back into it if they play it right.
All right. That was cute. Xarxith also used beads there, which when you're talking about the lack of CC immunity from Merlin, having your beads down and level 5 around the corner, do you expect to see an instant on cooldown Thor gank of this Merlin to really try to hammer home the idea of keeping that Merlin down, not allowing late game to show up for Xarxith?
How are you going to yell at me about my joke and then say that?
What did I say?
Hammer joke with Thor?
Oh, I
Come
actually didn't even think about it. See, I didn't do it on
on. Oh
purpose.
my.
That's the difference between you and me.
At least I admit to it.
12 in a bit of trouble, forced into Shiva Tendava. MiniDelvin wanted to get crazy for it, but can't get that crazy against that ultimate. Just a bit too strong coming out of 12, so Delvin has to back away.
Will be good enough sustain to at least keep alive, but that is still King Arthur, and if you get caught out outside a tower, even if you're Shiva, that could be trouble.
Now the Shockwave's going to get aggressive. Desert Fury out after the jump, and Vayu took mounted archery, but into a really bad spot, and Aritti's going to find that one. Fear no evil, and River's Rebuke combined to clean up Aritti in favor of Axine on a landing. Virtually didn't find a home. So now Hindu and Virtually are alone in a split call between the two of them. Virtually stepped forward, Hindu stepped back, but looks like not going to be too much of a problem. Could have been, certainly, especially with the light rotation from Xarxith, but now actually she's opened up to Thor, sneaking up on her and Virtually trying to clean up the kill through space and time off the mark. Unstable Vortex, much better hit. Adora picks up a kill.
Unstable Vortex just swinging so hard at the end there. Felt like Xarxith still had a quarter HP left and just dropped instantly. So once again, the team fight really going to be coming in absolutely clutch for the Seismic Shockwaves.
Do you think that team fight will show its head early? I mean, a question I've been asking a lot lately is, do you expect that Beacon to be a first big team fight, maybe bringing out rotations from the soul lane, or have you been more seeing kind of the Gold Fury, can we do it, around that 8-minute mark, and then Beacon is sort of a, oh, can we get it? No? No big deal.
If Seismic Shockwaves keep this pace, we may see Gold Fury almost pulled, if not looked at, before the beacon even spawns. But if there's not too much aggression and it takes us a little bit of a slower pace, then we may end up seeing our first real, like, 4v4 team fight around the beacon.
Oh, you know, I've just been reminded here. So we talked a bit about that soul lane. Actually, I have to wait because Hoombat's sneaking up behind Aritti, who's looking for the solo kill on Vayu, but behind will be the Hoonbats with company in the form of Yamoja. Aritti's in a really rough spot here. Already used that Desert's Fury. Own goal pillar, chased down by Axie. Mounted archery too, but somebody's got to get Aritti. Finally, they'll get him. They pushed up really far, but only Hindu was there to make them pay. Anyway, back to what I want to talk about during this purple invade, because I want you to know this. There was a gentleman's agreement before this game, before this set, I should say, between the solo laners. They agreed to no Tyr, no Jormungandr, and no Wukong. So I respect that.
I respect it. That has got to be one of the best gentlemen's agreements I've heard in a very long time.
Yeah. I mean, that's how you figure out who's better. You limit what's broken, you play what's comfortable, and you see who gets the best. In this scenario, MiniDelvin almost caught 12 off guard there. Virtually same problem in mid. Gonna have to take the escape route provided from Adora, and will be able to get away. A bit of a split. The Shockwaves haven't really been traveling as a pack so much as we'd like to see. You mentioned a lot of it's going to be Virtually kind of figuring out what he can do, when he can do it, and who he can do it with.
Thor is one of those picks where if you can make it work with the team, especially with that Anvil of Dawn getting those surprise ganks off, it can go very, very wrong for the other team very quickly. But if you're a little bit unsure or you hesitate a little bit, its true potential doesn't quite shine, even if the player itself still is. So Thor is just an odd pick where even if we're not seeing those ults coming in left and right, just dunking on people's heads, they're still playing well, and Virtually is still doing quite well. But it's not quite the huge star pop-up that you normally see.
Yeah, 100%. Virtually, I would consider one of the well-known hard carry jungles we have in the STL. Delvin and 12 going back at it. Shiva Tendava not available for 12, so needs to play this a bit safe. Does get caught in the stun, but able to get away. Had just enough spacing to be safe enough to avoid a dive from Delvin. It was risky, though, and we're seeing this time and time again from 12, really playing it risky in that soul lane. I wouldn't be surprised to see Delvin try to take advantage. Now, back to duo. Axie dives in with company. Virtually in a lot of trouble. Virtually gone. Killing spree for the Hoonbots. Honestly, too much confidence there. I think the Shockwaves, jungler and ADC both just got a bit too comfortable contesting a shield buff. They probably didn't have a right to contest right there. we do have a better view of those scenarios than in game, but just more of that getting used to each other that you were talking about.
Wasn't quite the ideal positioning. Obviously, it's never a bad idea to try and get some of the farm and steal it
Especially
away,
early.
or even yeah, and contest that buff, especially since shield buff really is a big value buff for the dual lane. But in this case, I think they just overestimated their team fight a little bit too much.
MiniDelvin still keeping 12 pressured out. You know, I mentioned to you earlier that I was curious if we'd see rotations come out from these solo laners early, especially around that 12-minute mark. And TPs will be back up before the first beacon, and MiniDelvin has had pressure on 12 this entire game so far. No solo kills, but the pressure has been significant. There really is writing on the wall to set up a really good rotation that Delvin could work for that first beacon.
If Delvin gets there early, especially if 12-inch isn't there quite yet, or even any sort of numbers advantage, that King Arthur could go very, very huge. The thing I'm worried about, though, is we've seen a beautiful team fight from the Kingslayers over in the duo lane, whereas Seismic Shockwaves have the solo pressure off of just one person. So we may see a little bit of an opposite side story here.
Aritti's shield buff is a popular place to be. Hindu played good defense there, so Aritti was able to secure the shield buff, but it's interesting how much attention's being put on it. I feel like nearly every single spawn of that shield buff we've seen 3 members minimum from Kingslayers over there. There's a real commitment to it.
It's definitely not a bad thing to get, especially because it really does enable a lot more boxing from the ADC, because that's an extra couple autos that you can eat. And when a couple autos from an ADC, especially in that early game, is just completely eaten without really taking down the health bar too much, it gives you a lot of extra space to make things happen.
And with that on her being somebody who likes to box, that is a really good point. And something that I'm sure Vayu is aware of, wanting to play for that late game, especially in Hachi, where on her can really look to fight both early and mid, especially in lane, as somebody who can really handle it, thanks to both Pillar and Impale. We're at 10 minutes currently, 3-3, 100 gold is the difference, nothing significant. The big change could be around the corner with this first beacon. That's where these teams are going to try to separate themselves. Most certainly. Virtually just playing defense in zone jungle is able to secure that green buff, and so the kind of slow burn pace, which is usually more accustomed to higher levels of play, showing here. Now Aritti overstaying is welcome and gets picked up by the mounted archery. I'm with you, Aritti. That surprised me too. I would have died the same exact way right there. Sneaky solo from Vayu. The Seismic Shockwaves now roll up on duo to try to make Vayu pay, but aggression comes back from the Kingslayers, and virtually is already forced out and low and gone. Axie will get the credit for that one. Adora just playing it safe, portals away, and Kingslayers turn their eyes to the Gold Fury, and with 11:45 on the clock, they could easily get this Gold Fury and then head to Beacon. It'll be up to Adora and through space and time to maybe contest this.
You know, I was worried about this Thor and Giannis making those big rotations, starting some early team fights, and really just getting active across the map. But it looks like Kingslayers taking a little bit of page out of their opponent's books and saying, you know what? We may not have the global ultimates, but we'll do the same game just as well.
Remember that the very, very tiny 100 gold lead I talked about? It's starting to grow, and the Shockwaves cannot afford to let Kingslayers get any kind of lead like that. You've already allowed 4 kills on the Hoonbots, Jeer. And what worries me more than the Hoonbots having 4 kills is Vayu having a lead in that Hachiman.
Yeah, we've seen Vayu on Hachiman really swing hard, and it's already swinging really hard, just not even 13 minutes into this game 1. So if it continues to grow, not to mention, Xarxith is now 0-2. Compared to the enemy mid laner who's 1-0-1, but they're the same level. So if Kingslayers are able to continue this pace and keep these teamfights rolling, it's going to be real bad for Seismic Shockwaves.
A lot being used on 12 in a solo lane. HiRezHinduman used for safety. Virtually just hanging out, continuing to help the solo laner get the pressure that the solo laner's earned this game. MiniDelvin has had 12 in the back foot the entire time. So I like virtually showing up to continue that pressure, go for this blue buff invade, and grow off the pressure. Problem is, as you can see left side of the map, Kingslayers have an opening. Hoombot's now pushing down left while Virtually and MiniDelvin push up right. So blue buff invade versus a bit of a spat in left. Blue buff invade much more pertinent and successful for the Shockwaves. 12 now just has to escape. Not having the best of luck, getting stunned. Chain stun available. Berserkers, and that's the first death for the solo laner. They had to work for it, but they got it.
She will end up falling, but Kingslayers continue to exert the pressure over in dual lane, so we're seeing opposite ends of the map.
Level 12 hit not long ago from MiniDelvin. Bought that blink, already coming aggressive. Slam from Virtually, back up from Hindu. Virtually finds Xarxith, now 3 deaths for the Merlin, and new openings for the Shockwaves in the mid lane to do what they want to do. Not a whole lot of the map. They've got a bit until Pyromancer's up, so they're going to have to look and figure out what they want to do with this time and this pressure. Looks like they're going to decide to disperse as Hindu will go help out on her, gives aritti some time to breathe and some space. So the Shockwaves they're a couple scrappy fights, and we're back to an even game. 14-30 about to be on the clock, and 5-5 with gold lead still insignificant difference.
Looks to me like the Seismic Shockwaves are really starting to remember we can do that rotate to a team fight early thing too. And if we actually get there first, Seismic Shockwaves are having a much better time winning these team fights, since the Emoja and Hunbats was really working well together early, but now they get the jump on them, turns the tables.
The best thing about going against a Hoombats is, no matter how good a Hoombats is, you know what their dream goal is. The start of a fight, 3 to 4, if not 5-man, fear no evil, to get things going. You know exactly what they want to do. Any character with something telegraphed is much easier to play against. In competitive settings, it can be harder, especially when you're against players who are as good as Axie, who can change that style up. But worth noting and seeing how they play around that Hoombats. Now, 12 in a bit of trouble at the silver buff, but Hindu and Delvin don't exactly have a mountain of kill potential, but they will force out the ultimate from the Shiva, so they'll take that with a thank you kindly.
Anything that can force, definitely not going to be a bad idea, especially if they're going to try and look at this Pyromancer, which it looks like they are. But King Arthur really just not quite able to get the kill, but keeping Shiva back as far as possible and keeping him down wherever they can is really going to open up a little bit of extra space for Seismic Shockwaves, since the duo lane for Kingslayers had a lot more pressure in the early game, and if they can keep the solo out of it as well now that they're coming back, it's going to make it a lot harder and much more of an uphill climb for Kingslayers to get themselves back in.
As we're in this in-between phase with both a Primal Fury and a Beacon potentially being soon, I just want to get your thoughts on the solo lane build on the side of the Shockwaves.
Seeing Contagion isn't too unusual, especially into a Shiva, but seeing a third item Glad Shield for King Arthur does feel a little bit different. I have seen a lot more of that Prophetic Cloak lately, and since Arthur's going to be able to stack it relatively quickly, it's not entirely unusual to see, since I've been seeing a lot more of it lately. But once that Glad Shield comes online, the King Arthur really going to start taking a lot more.
With the Beacon around the corner, it looks like the Shockwaves have decided they want to group up and go for it, and the Kingslayers are ready to answer. Only person missing on the map right now are the solo laners. And at that, just MiniDelvin. 12 is here. Delvin getting the call, actually going to start to back, but could be late to this Beacon fight. So keep your eyes out. TB going to come in. Kingslayers don't take advantage. Still have time. Still have calm for the storm, but this Beacon will be a fight. Just looking for an opening. Pillar starts it. HiRezHinduman goes in with the flop, but no real commit. Tatri is the main focus, but River's Rebuke comes out. Desert Fury can't find Tatri. Kingslayer is able to escape, but that is a support down low. And now the Beacon going to be taken by the Shockwaves. No last-second heroics, so no blood for it. And the Shockwaves play it nicely, and that might be one of the cleaner Stygian Beacons I've seen in a long time, Jeer.
It's definitely going to be a lot harder for the Emoja to try and heal her team and sustain around. You just kill the Emoja. If she's out of the picture, then don't got to worry about it.
Pyromancer will go the way of the Shockwaves, and 12 will be taken up into the sky right after. Now the Kingslayers realize they've got a health advantage and a man advantage, and they're going to push it, but the blink for the blink, and the Fear No Evil finds no home. Now HinduMan's in trouble, has to go home. Adora finds Axie Slam from Virtually, and the fight's turning in favor of the Shockwaves so far, and the Kingslayers just have to look to go back. MiniDelvin here as well. Vayu, new target, very low, but a backup from Delvin. Double tap from Virtually, he's in deep. Berserkers is good. Can he get the escape off? No, he can't. Xarxith will clean up Vert. Now MiniDelvin alone, Unstable Vortex for some help, but can't quite get him away from the flames of Xarxith, who now has 2 kills. Make it 2-3-1, making up for the early game. Xarxith keeps Kingslayers in the fight and avoids disaster.
It was a good engage, but unfortunately ended up turning a little bit sour for the Seismic Shockwaves. Kingslayers tried to get in, got a little bit out of it. Seismic Shockwaves really doing their best to turn that on its head and get a nice counter engage. But Kingslayers teamfight find its true colors here. I've been the early game. They work really well together in this team comp.
For sure, and we're starting to see more of that synergy that you were looking for. You said it was going to take time. You expected around 20 minutes, if I remember, 20 minutes to that mid-game area. And Virtually starting to pull through and starting to feel like he's playing more with the team. We saw it in that engage that we saw earlier, that Virtually had gone in as Hindu went out. That time, Virtually went in at a great time, had Delvin at his back. They had to split due to the amount of damage that was being dished out, but still, it's improvement. And when you're using a sub in arguably one of the most, if not the most important roles, you need that synergy to come online and quickly, especially in a hyper-competitive game like the Kingslayers, who are so talented.
Just the individual talent from the Kingslayers makes it really hard for them to get in on their own.
That double tap did so much damage, it forced the Shiva Tandava out of fear. I would have done the same thing. The damage was pretty significant considering how tanky that Shiva is with the Manicore spikes as well as the Soul Eater. You wouldn't think it'd be that much damage and a Glad Shield at that, but it's going to cost them a tier 1 tower. So solo lane pressured out, tier 1 tower gone in duo as well, so both side lanes pushed up to tier 2s. Mid lane always feels like the least safe lane, and with I'm expecting a Titan push from these teams. After that last beacon, when the Titans head out, I'm expecting both teams to really put an emphasis on that Titan to try to get an advantage in the remaining healthy lane, because they do share that mid lane is the healthiest spot, and that's usually where we see a lot of action.
We've already seen a little bit of action around the side lanes, but this time, once those Titans start coming down, it's really going to be a brawl in the mid lane. If one team manages to end up taking out the Titan early, they may actually look to just go for an objective instead. I've seen a few times the team just opts to instead go for Fire Giant rather than push up with the Titan, and the Seismic Shock to force that fight.
HinduMan gets pulled back in the Riptide and CC'd some more, but the Fear No Evil was off the mark on Hindu. Only found Delvin, and now they're going to go back in through space and time, hits 2, and Virtually follows up beautifully to find Vayu. Now Shockwaves have a new opening, and they're going to drop 2 more with it, and they've got Tatri in between 5 members. They're going to step up, and they're going to look for Tatri, find Tatri, double kill for Delvin. Only Xarxith remains, no heroics this time from the Merlin. So the Shockwaves have a Primal Fury on the horizon, no contest possible, and 4 down, making it an 11-8 game as we get close to 22 minutes, and a 3k gold lead favoring the Shockwaves. That'll jump up to a 5k lead after the Gold Fury. 4k, excuse me.
That was a beautiful engage from the Seismic Shockwaves, going in right as King Arthur starts making some space, through space and time connects, and the Thor dunk timed perfectly on anybody trying to escape, just completely cut off any possible escape routes. Seismic Shockwaves on the backs of Virtually are really making the synergy pull together, and they are really starting to figure this out. Kingslayers might be in quite a bit more trouble than they bargained for.
I am noticing it the most from the setup. I mean, we've seen it twice now, that the way the Shockwaves initiate and then follow up is just so on point. They utilize the knockup from Hindu so well. The slow off the pillar combined with the knockup from the flop and belch set up really nicely for through space and time, and Virtually has been on point with the Anvil of Dawn. Now Pyromancer gets pulled from 4 of the 5 members of Shockwaves, but the Kingslayers here to contest and a pull in already. They're going to focus on the Pyro, but the Pyro will go to the Shockwaves. Afterwards, though, Axie gets a cleanup kill on Virtually. The Kingslayers will push forward, but they forgot there was 2 behind, and now Honor was there and waiting and spread some fantastic damage. Adora there to clean up Axie. Aritti cleans up 12, and they get 2 kills off of the overzealous play from the Kingslayers.
Kingslayers' dive goes in just a little bit too deep, and unfortunately, Shockwaves were there to call them out on it. Turned almost a sour teamfight into a complete turnaround. End up taking a 1-for-2 plus the Pyromancer. Kingslayers now gonna have to worry about that Titan turns down in the mid lane, just like we talked about earlier.
Hindu gets a 2-person stun with both Aritti and Delvin. Bit too low to have an interest in diving the tier 1 tower, even at this stage. We're about 23.5 minutes in, and around this time, we usually see the most chaos break out. The Titans marching down the lanes has become a call to action for, like you said, either sneaky plays of letting them push and you go for Fire Giant. Usually better when the Chaos team does that, as their Titan has the inherent advantage. But if that's not the case, we see what we're seeing right here, which is a full-on 5v5 brawl at mid-game over the Titans.
Right now, Seismic Shockwaves end up getting to it first, but their Titan took quite a bit of minion damage. But with their combined efforts, they will actually win the Titan fight. Kingslayers now forced a little bit on the defensive.
And the Titan is a bit too low to full commit to that tier 1 tower, as it is fully healthy. So the Shockwaves won't get too much out of winning the Titan fight out. And the Kingslayers are there to defend, so we'll see a back come out from most of the Shockwaves. But a 2-man stun from Virtually, unfortunately, seems to have snuck up on everybody, so no initiative was taken from the boys in blue.
Bit of poke, a little bit of extra damage, never gonna hurt anybody except the other team, but Kingslayers, a little bit low mana on the mid laner, so they're gonna have to back, try and grab some farm, and really just adjust their strategy, because so far, they haven't quite been able to figure out the Seismic Shockwaves since the early game. And especially with Fire Giant now being on the board, no other objectives available besides an intermittent Gold Fury, Kingslayers are going to have to make something happen if they really want to crack down on this beautiful team play coming out from the Seismic Shockwaves.
Really is impressive team play. It's one of the better ones I've seen, and the reason it sticks out to me so much personally is because the Kingslayers have had the same thing for me. They have had really great team play. Tatri and Xarxith, both teammates last season, were able to carry that through, or excuse me, competitors last season, but they played a lot of games together, including the finals, and they're used to each other. They played together in other leagues as well, and this whole season, the Kingslayers have had such good synergy that to see the Shockwaves really controlled and handle these team fights is just so impressive.
Especially with all just the raw individual talent, just being able to 1v1 somebody else and have that authority.
A Primal Fury will lead to a Fire Giant startup from the Kingslayers. Through Space and Time is available, so the Shockwaves can get there in plenty of time. Matter of fact, it was used, and the Kingslayers let it go, but that might be an opening for the Shockwaves to try to take a risk and take the 50-50. Virtually slams down on top of it. Fire Giant down to 10% health. Kingslayers go back in pit, and they take back the Fire Giant that they let go. Now the Shockwaves going to take the fight after the fact, after Tatri used River's Rebuke. Now the Shockwaves get too deep. HiRezHinduman falling low, has to back out, but can't get away from 12. On her, there for some help with the big crits. Desert's Fury will follow out. Virtually and Xarxith take the 1v1 to the left, but Hindu gets there for the safety of Virtually. But what about the team on the right? MiniDelvin left alone, left to the grayscale, gone from 12. Aritti now has to find a way out, but with Xarxith behind, new opening has been created for the Kingslayers to step forward. Aritti takes a lot of poke, but HiRezHinduman gets his ADC out of there. It's full retreat for the Shockwaves here after a risky play call at the Fire Giant does not go their way.
Seismic Shockwaves continuing to try and retreat, but 12-inch not willing to let that happen, and Xarxith all for it Virtually here. Make sure the retreat is survivable, but Kingslayers with Fire Giant around all 5 belts. The Seismic Shockwaves may have a little bit better secure with the Desert's Fury and Through Space and Time, but Kingslayers able to take that 50-50 burn a little bit better.
Virtually used the double tap for some poke, and the Kingslayers knew it, and they stepped forward and just erased the Thor, just catching out the mistake there. I'm sure Virtually knew it as soon as he did it. Now HinduMan flops in, looking for a knock-up, doesn't find much, gets the belch off, but Fear No Evil kept aritti from joining the fight. Now, Adora comes from the side, looking to help out, can't quite find it. Mid Phoenix gonna fall. MiniDelvin and Through Space and Time finds 2, and they're gone! A gorgeous Through Space and Time could be the change the Shockwaves needed. They're gonna find Xarxith too, that's 3 down! The Kingslayers didn't even make a mistake. Adora made the play. We talked about it, Jeer. We mentioned the Giannis. We said look out, and it just showed its ugly head. The Kingslayers are caught off guard.
Through space, through time, through a couple walls, and right through their foreheads, Kingslayers completely blindsided by an absolute freight train. The entire dive from Kingslayers just erased in a single moment, and that is just going to be disaster off of a beautiful play from the Kingslayers there.
It's so frustrating to do nothing really wrong and still walk away like that just from one ultimate, but Adora has that ability. Giannis has that ability. And Shockwaves took advantage of it and played it nice, but now maybe overstaying as aritti almost picked up. Vayu gonna go for the chase, mounted archery, but the pillar! Oh my god, are you kidding me? How big is that man's brain? Absurd play from aritti, but now they got to escape, and they've got Through Space and Time. Are you kidding me? Oh my god!
They had all the damage in the world, but Kingslayers, despite not making really any mistake there, the Seismic Shockwaves just managed to get out just in the nick of time. The most beautiful pillar I think I've ever seen. And honestly, that's just heartbreaking. I honestly feel bad for the Kingslayers after that one.
I'm in shock. That was insane. I mean, I had barely recovered from the Through Space and Time double for that pillar. I mean, I got nothing for that. That was so smart. Absolute clinic from aritti this game, and it puts us, I mean, we're 30 minutes in, 16-11. We've got another potential crazy fight on the horizon. Virtually starts it off by getting picked up and dropped down, but Vayu could follow Desert's Fury. Can that find it? Not so far. Vayu using the River's Rebuke for safety, gets a second shield, but it's not enough for aritti to drop him. Now Adora comes back in and helps out aritti get the double kill, and the Shockwaves have another opening created with the help of Adora and aritti. 12 will run into Hindu, gonna face the belch, get stunned out, get sent to the grave. Triple kill for aritti, looking for more. Aegis on Axie, it's a quadra kill for aritti with the help of the Shockwaves. They just cannot be stopped.
Off the backs of just one ADC, this Anhur went from the most beautiful pillar ever to a quadra kill. Seismic Shockwaves are just manhandling whatever the Kingslayers throw at them. And it's not even the Kingslayers' fault. They're playing beautifully. They're doing everything that they can, throwing every last option in the book, and it just isn't enough.
Watching aritti is a clinic, and we came into this game with me excited for this matchup. But off the back of one of the best games we've seen from an ADC this season, played by Vayu. And aritti comes in and puts plays like that out there. It's absurd. I can't comprehend the mechanics that have been put on display, not just by aritti, but from Adora, Hindu. Delvin has been diving in an incredible way, and it's all culminated in the first EFG pull of the game. And the Shockwaves have really established this is going to be a fight if the Kingslayers even want to try.
The Kingslayers definitely stepping up to the Fire Giant, already half HP. Shockwaves gonna have to try either leech it or dive.
Looks like they're gonna dive. Hindu tried to make a play happen, but Virtually getting poked out from 12, it wasn't available, and Axie's gonna find the kill onto Hindu. Now MiniDelvin alone with Xarxith could be in a lot of trouble because the Shockwaves are way too split. Aritti's not even there, so Delvin could be paying the Pied Piper and will be. Vayu picks that one up. The rest of the Shockwaves have to full retreat, which will be an EFG for the Kingslayers most likely. Virtually gonna hang out, but there is a ward. It's ready. Virtually gonna have to take a different route. He knows of the ward. Fire Giant's down to 5k, 4k, 3k. Might not be in time. Will not. Nice try from Virtually, but can't get it. But 12 runs into aritti. Thankfully, just tanky enough to not get one shot by the Anhur's dominance.
Clearly 12-inch is not interested in testing aritti because they already figured out how that one went. and they have no interest in repeating that. This time, though, I'm seeing a familiar story charging in with Fire Giant towards the mid Phoenix, but Adora does have ult.
I like the chances here for the Kingslayers. Are they going to go in behind a Fear No Evil? They're going to get nothing much out of it, but they do pick up Adora, but I think they wanted those other two who were stuck in the Fear No Evil. So an interesting play doesn't culminate in more than one death, but it was a big death at that. Mid Phoenix taken back out, but there is still 2 tier 2 towers up Jeer, which buys the Shockwaves a lot of time.
Might not be quite enough time for Adora to respawn here soon since it's still 40 seconds, but Kingslayers have more than enough space to do whatever they want to this Phoenix.
Virtually in the sky, gonna look for the landing, gonna find just 12. We'll see if the damage is enough behind it. Not so far. Virtually gets picked up by Xarxith. The Rebuke is out to keep Shockwaves under control. HiRezHinduman gonna look for a big belch. Finds 2 people, but the damage is lacking. They're really missing Adora right now, but they've got Aritti, they got Delvin. They're gonna find Axi. Now the Kingslayers step back up to try to make a new play happen out of it, and Hindu's been left alone to play defense, and he just didn't have the health for it. Xarxith makes him pay. Now the Kingslayers stand strong, 4 still up, still have EFG, and the Shockwaves, realizing they're going in one at a time, start to take steps back, but I don't know if it's going to be enough in time.
Adora is respawned. Here comes space and time.
Oh! They all lined up for it. No picks off of it, but they basically got in a line and did a conga line through space and time. Absurd.
That was terrifying to see them all standing in the same place as it's getting charged. My heart leapt out of my throat.
Adora's disgusting. Aritti's gross. Like, what more can you say? Xarxith has had a sneakily great game after a really rough start that we talked about. She's really made a comeback, and Vayu is still pumping out numbers. And it's led us to a game that at 34 minutes, 21-17, is even. The only thing not even is the Phoenixes, but we've seen that the Shockwaves defense is immaculate.
It's just so hard for the Kingslayers to break that defense, even with EFG, even with the numbers advantage. They got 1 Phoenix, had to rotate to the other side, did manage to get the 2nd Phoenix, but after quite a bit of trouble. So even with all the advantages in the world, this is not the type of game that either of them can win easily. And not to mention, Virtually is the club sub. That's not even the normal roster. And keep in mind, Virtually is playing just like these other star players.
HiRezHinduman went for a soft defense, the tier 2 and almost paid for it, but is able to get away. Shockwaves now still have 1 Phoenix up. Good news for them. It's that important Phoenix Jeer we always talk about. But bad news is they're going to lose all the farm in the map you can think of. The Primal Fury's down. Pyro will be up and probably be taken. Do they contest this EFG?
Since the left Phoenix is still up, they actually have a lot more time and a bit more space to try and get close to the Fire Giant, since it's not that far of a walk from Solo's side, even buff, over to Fire Giant, especially with that 3 space and time. So Seismic Shockwaves can try and either steal or just soft contest, but it's not going to be very easy for them, especially since Kingslayers, they're really starting to make some good adjustments and finally starting to figure out how to get into Seismic Shockwaves' backline and do enough damage to convince them to back off.
They're sending Hindu forward as a scout once again. He will see that Pyro's being taken. Should be able to get away safely. Pyro gonna go to Kingslayers. No contest there. Naturally, shouldn't be. Virtually, a bit stepped up. Does have Delvin by his side. Fire Minion Wave in solo is pushed up past blue buff. So that wave will need to be handled before the Shockwaves can commit. And the Kingslayers look like they know that. They're actually stepping up really far. They could get a pick pretty easily, but Riptide not gonna find Hindu. That could have been a game-changing Riptide, as miscellaneous as that might have seemed.
And it could have been absolutely game-ending if they were able to get enough space off of it, but here comes 2.
Nobody was there to follow that one up, which is so unfortunate for the Kingslayers. That was a gorgeous Riptide to bring them both back in. Aritti, focus on mid, virtually heads to solo, so 3 split the difference that Kingslayers can see. The waves are being managed very well. Ooh, Hindu with the knock-up on Xarxith, but Unstable Vortex wasn't able to find a home. The tension's real for this Fire Giant. and both teams know how important it is. They need a pick, and virtually could be that pick goes to the sky. We know how aggressive Vert is. Going to go for the landing on Xarxith. Does not find a home. And the Shockwaves need some help, but aritti needs no one, just needs to put 12 in the dirt. Now the Shockwaves have a member up after almost losing virtually. That's a great space to be in.
Virtually did end up going into the backline with low HP, trying to target out Xarxith. Does not manage to find the kill, but buys more than enough time for the rest of the team to take out the enemy solo laners. So Kingslayers now are going to be a little bit on the back foot of this fight.
Adora's actually split pushing Giannis right now, which is oddly safe considering the portal should be able to get this tier 2 tower, but Xarxith actually will stop it. Adora in a lot of danger. Now Virtually's here to maybe clean up Xarxith, but he gets caught and popped to the grave. Virtually goes. Xarxith gets the credit. Now 5 for the Merlin, really establishing the presence on that character, and they didn't get that tier 2. I thought maybe one more auto could sneak out from Adora, but I've been proven wrong, and it almost cost Adora, and it did cost Virtually. Good news for the Shockwaves, Jeer. They've got their Phoenixes back up.
They do have the Phoenixes back up, but they're now looking at a 4v5 as this EFG is up once again. The Kingslayers have their solo laner back. Seismic Shockwaves do not have their jungler this time. And I don't know about you, but watching that last fight, seeing every little Riptide catch somebody is like watching Adora charge through space and time. It just fills me with terror and excitement at what is about to happen next.
That's the best part. That's the best part about Smite. It's that fear, that tension, that excitement of what play could come next. It's 40 minutes now around the corner, and it looks like the Kingslayers might be done. They try to make a play to find aritti, but cannot find a home. Instead, they find half health on Hindu. Magi's still up, which should help out. Fear no evil pops that Magi's, but they're going to dive in for Hindu anyway. aritti forced to use Desert's Fury, can't get it off in time, gets shut down by Vayu, and the Kingslayers turn their attention back. They've got the Fire Giant on the mind. They're 5 members strong, but the Shockwaves still have that through space and time, Jeer, and we talked about the danger of that. The Kingslayers have to be present of that on this EFG.
I feel like every time I see it charged,
Oh!
it's just detrimental.
Virtually slams down and gets a delete on the Xarxith. That's gigantic, and Adora was from the side, and Adora almost got rid of 12. Now Hindu's there, and Adora's there! And Adora blows up Vayu. Hindu tries to get the knock up on Axie, but a stable Vortex finds the home, and Delvin goes forward and sends Axie home. Now Adora chases everybody out. Will chase them to the fountain if needed, if it secures that EFG for the Shockwaves. Again, Adora pulls through, and again, Virtually finds a massive ultimate, and every time those two things happen, magic follows.
Seismic Shockwaves really are just some magicians pulling so much out of so little. Just one ability making so much happen.
Hindu goes for the knock-up on Tatri, can't find it, has to use that vomit to try to help out. I said vomit, I meant slam, excuse me. I'm thinking of the drunk. I'm way ahead of things. Now, Shockwaves step back beyond Phoenix line. Didn't go for that EFG. They wanted a Phoenix, and they didn't get it, Jeer. Was that the right call?
They definitely took a lot of poke and wasted a lot of time. So Seismic Shockwaves not going to be able to get too much off of that push, but this does offer the option of the Oni Fury, which I think that's still a pretty nice thing to get.
Yeah. Could have probably got the EFG. But we'll take the Oni. Now with the Oni pushing up, they're in a great spot for it. 41 minutes, 25-19 Shockwaves, Kingslayers. HinduMan's belches and intoxicates have led to a fantastic follow-up consistently. Adora's ultimates have been disgusting this entire game. Aritti's mechanics have been on display, and Virtually's target selection with the front line of MiniDelvin have led to greatness. Not to be outdone, though, Xarxith and company have had great responses all around. Vayu and Axie have been able to deal significant damage, with Xarxith really making a comeback this game. Now, towards the top of the damage charts, catching up to her teammate Vayu and Adora, despite everything that's went down. It's truly a heavyweight matchup.
And saying all of that, I really have to think 12-inch has been really, really solid, just providing a little bit of CC, keeping the team sustained with a little bit of extra health on that Shiva Tandava, dealing some extra damage, and creating a lot of space for the backline and Kingslayers. It just feels wrong to even think that 12-inch is being outshined, playing this great for the team, but there's so much raw talent from the players on these teams. It's almost criminal to think that this is just an Immortal game and not like SEC. This is truly impressive from every single person here.
100%. And this, we can talk about the standouts nonstop, but we've got to still focus on what's in front of us. And we got to look at the small things. 2 bombs in pocket for Kingslayers. Keep that in mind. Relics are currently borderline even, so both teams will have every advantage needed. This next EFG fight could be a make or break. You've got to use those relics wisely. Axi's lurking to the side deep, but no flank available. MiniDelvin lurking too far up.
Trying to create some extra space. Seismic Shockwaves really want to have pressure on this fire. Looks like they're going for it.
Hindu did already get poked out below half health and understood he needed to get away. Axi is still lurking, looking for that flank, and they've got the ward advantage in that spot, so Axi could do it. Now Aritti's actually on that ward, so Axi's got really good setup. Actually going to back away, though. Kind of give up that nice position that he has. Granted, they don't see the same wards as us, but still, that was a great spot Axi was in, Jeer.
Had the potential, but unfortunately, Axi just couldn't quite find the right time to get in. And it looks like both teams really just hesitating because they know if they step up just a little bit too far, the other team has more than enough pressure to just completely get rid of them. And at this point in the game, with EFG on the table and all the towers gone, that could be a game-ending call if they step up too far.
This EFG will be the target. We will not see them leave this spot too much. Maybe a buff here and there, but no fire waves, no Oni waves, no pyro. Just EFG and a dance session for both teams. Adora does look for some poke with Unstable Vortex, but could not quite find it. The Kingslayers reset again. Now Adora will head to that mid lane, maybe farming up for more power pots. Got to prepare for your next 3k pot around that 45-minute mark. It's kind of just how things go. I would get out of there, Adora. I don't like that spot. Has to use through space and time. Mounted archery doesn't find it. Green buff could help out. Not going to help out. Adora gets away, but that's a big blunder because now the Shockwaves are set up for trouble. They've got to retreat. That might cost them the EFG. Adora with a massive misplay, and for what? Just some farm for a power pot?
Almost looked like Adora was trying to lead them on a wild goose chase, chasing Giannis around the walls, while the Seismic Shockwave's going for fire, but Kingslayers now.
It's at a quarter. It's low. Kingslayers get it, but virtually slams down. Has Hindu for backup. Aritti is there as well and does good damage, but gets poked out, forced to use that Aegis, and Axi chases him down, but virtually catches Axi out. Now Adora finds Vayu. They got a fire chime, but they're throwing away the game, and the Shockwaves are taking advantage. They can step up. They can end off this. They've got a 5v3. They just don't have fire. River's Rebuke Force 2 from Tatri. That's a huge defense tool now out of pocket for the Kingslayers. The Shockwaves, just time and time again, give them an inch and they'll take 17 miles. It's absurdity.
Every time the Kingslayers think they have one thing going, the Shockwaves try to prove them wrong with every available tool, and I gotta say, Seismic Shockwaves is carrying around a toolbox right now because every single time they're just crafting some incredibly absurd just maneuver to make something happen. And Kingslayers, despite all these beautiful efforts and everything that they've done this entire game, the Shockwaves seem to have an answer for every question being asked.
All you need to do is look at the player damage, because we've been talking about the mechanics of Aritti under 30k. We've talked about the comeback of Xarxith, 44,000, catching up to Adora, who's been dominant. We mentioned that a few times. Sitting at 50k, but not to be outdone by Vayu. Sitting at 48. That's ridiculous that so many people are so high up in the damage charts. And both of these junglers are set up pick junglers. So you're not going to see them typically drop 60,000 damage games. So they're both doing great for their own respect. We've said it so many times, but we're going to be repeating ourselves. It's just absurd, the matchup. Pyro does get picked up by the Shockwaves, but they will retreat after. No interest in a fight right this second.
It's really hard for the dives to really get active on the backline, especially against Adora to Aritti, who Aritti is pumping out numbers at truly a frightening rate. Adora literally just instilling the fear in us as casters. We're not even in this game.
Oh yeah, I'd ban that Giannis.
I'm already
100%.
terrified of that. So seeing 12-inch and Axi trying to get in there and still doing this much work against that, it's almost the same testament of virtually and Delve. And doing these types of plays against Xarxith and Vayu, it's really just a testament to how well both of these teams work together and just the individual talent of them alone making this beautiful work of art.
Virtually almost got picked off again. You cannot afford to get picked up right there. You cannot afford to step that far up. And I'm sure the Shockwaves are saying the same thing. Axi and Virtually both will be mid bots. Virtually will look for a potential gank using that Anvil of Dawn. Actually, it could be set up really nice for it. Instead, was trying to pop that Magi's, but look how pushed up the Kingslayers are. Maybe a missed opportunity lying in wait there for Virtually, given the positioning, but still just a Phoenix dance.
Trying to set up around the mid lane, actually trying to get that split push 4-1, but Virtually does have the dunk to go around to the other side if need be. So Shockwaves, you've already seen their base defense.
Here we go. 12 goes in. Virtually goes in on Axi. Both fights important. I'll keep you updated on both as Virtually and Axi trade blows. Axi going to get dropped by Virtually. Back to right side. Looks like the Shockwave is going to step up. Delvin in deep. Has them separated. Has them in trouble. Hindu follows up. Two-man knock up. Could be problems for Vayu. They got to keep the Hachi alive here. But Adora won't let that happen. Goes through the portal. Hits the Unstable Vortex and sends Vayu to the grave. Now going to do the same thing for Xarxith. But Xarxith got brought up in the sky before the Unstable Vortex could hit. On the landing, Xarxith hits the Aegis. Virtually slams down. Finds Tatri. Xarxith gone. Double kill for Virtually. 12's gonna follow, and the Shockwaves have done it. They found the deicide. The Kingslayers have overplayed their hand once again, and I don't think they've got the time to survive this one, Jeer. 40 seconds for Axi after a back and forth war full of mechanics, full of shot calls, plays, micro mistakes, and hyper advantages. The Shockwaves march it down solo. They're going to take the Phoenix out, and 20 seconds will not be enough time to stop the onslaught here from the Shockwaves. They're going to walk right into the throne room and send us to game 2, being up 1-0.
The back of a beautiful play. Seismic Shockwaves just not to be outdone. Absolutely beautiful.
What a showcase that game was. It's hard to believe that was game 1. You know, I mentioned when we first started in that very first pick and ban, I mentioned it plain and simple that the Shockwaves are a playoff capable team. They're fighting to chase down Wild Inferno, and I feel like I've been proven right, but not just by the Shockwaves. The Kingslayers showed a lot to me there. They really had their, I said it, their micro mistakes were taken advantage of. They did the best possible. The Shockwaves just took advantage of it, Jeer.
Every single time the Kingslayers tried to make something happen, even if there was just the tiniest possible little crack, the Seismic Shockwaves immediately took it, pressed it, and turned it into an entire ravine, just torn asunder as the earth itself splits apart. Every little piece that happened was just continuing to chip away, and despite all the best efforts of the Kingslayers, it's really, really hard to play against that, especially when Adora can just sit in mid lane, take out your entire dive all the way by blue buff, and then just chase you down even further.
Yeah, you know, usually we go into really deep analysis and what to change, but realistically, ban out the Giannis, and you know what? You guys were right. Keep the focus on Xarxith and maybe try to work around getting that HiRezHinduman off Vayu. But with that was a long game number 1, so we're sure that you need a break as well as us. We'll be right back in the Smite Draft League with game number 2 between the Kingslayers and the Seismic Shockwaves. Hello, welcome back to the Smite Draft League. I sure missed you. I'm still AnthonyMalum. I'm still joined by Jeeringlamb. Nooblet's still pushing our buttons. that was a good one, Anthony. Pat on my own back. An incredibly exciting game one is in our rearview mirror, Jeer. And with game two, I mean, I'm banning Giannis. We talked about that off camera, but like I'm getting rid of that Giannis. I don't want anything to do with it if I'm the Kingslayers. I don't care. I don't care what you give up. I'd rather play against almost anything except for maybe Marty, and I just don't want Adora on that character anymore.
I mean, at that point, watching those through space and times being cast, I almost would prefer to see them Marty because there really isn't anything you can do. Just going straight through those walls hits you right through the forehead, and then you're gray screened, and you have no idea what just happened. I There really just isn't much you can do against that, and Kingslayers, despite all their best efforts, they figured out the very, very hard way. Adora just could not be stopped. You might as well just give Xarxith Tiamat and let them duke it out one on one because I
Oh, I
really
like
don't
that.
think there's like nothing else you can do to stop that.
Can I request a maneuver? Because that that would be amazing. I mean, if we're gonna have the gentleman's agreement once again in Soul Lane, I'll remind you of that while we're at it. If there's no Jormungandr, no Sun Wukong, and no Tyr, why not have an agreement if we have Tiamat versus Giannis in the mid lane? Get crazy. Give me a finals matchup where the two teams pre-agree. And okay, never mind. I understand. I respect it. First ban, Giannis. Total respect ban.
No, no, that's fair. That's a good idea. Getting rid of the Marty, that's also a good idea.
No Tiamat first ban this time, so keep your eyes out for that. We'll see if the Shockwaves decide maybe they can take the risk of dealing with Xarxith Tiamat and prioritizing something else. But considering they did use 3 bans on Xarxith and she still pulled out that Merlin and performed that way, I wouldn't be surprised to still see Tiamat, if not others, banned from that mid lane.
I would really expect to see at least 2 or 3 mid bans because they recognize exactly the threat that it is. But seeing 2 and only mid ban so far as Marty, you gotta ask some questions, but you do gotta appreciate Kingslayer is getting rid of the Athena, so HinduMan can't be rocking that. That's that's actually a very good idea because HinduMan really has been a really solid setup for this team and a great way to engage for the team. Is letting HinduMan get in there and
It's in the initiation.
yeah,
It's just so good. It's so consistent. It feels like the Shockwaves know when Hindu initiates, he's not going to choose a moment where he'll get deleted. He might go to half health, but the initiation is still clean and you still have a way to follow up. And them banning that Athena to me says a lot about what they don't want Hindu to have because Tatri is, I would say, an esteemed Athena player. So banning that away from Hindu, you're taking it away from yourself just off the risk, which says a lot about what they want to avoid. However, they did prioritize a Ganesh ban, which means there is a Geb on the table, namesake of the team, as well as a character. Since we're talking about both Initiation and Hindu Man, that's a character we've seen a ton of.
we still see a lot of options being left open. The Thor once again being left open, like you said, that Geb, a very real threat.
To
And it looks
shatter
like Kingslayer is going to
mountains.
go ahead and go straight for the Thor, this time taken away from Seismic Shockwaves.
I like that here because you virtually is a talent, and we mentioned this way back in the draft. Virtually is a talent who could have easily gone early Immortal by a lot of accounts. So playing up from Divine isn't as big of a deal for Virtually as it might be for some other junglers. So taking away the Thor is a power play to
I
me
will
because you're
win peace
controlling
by
comfort if
force.
that's an issue, but you're also just in general getting a good character, which is the same logic used on the pickup here from the Shockwaves, taking that Hachiman away from Vayu, putting it on Aritti, who did have a great game on the on her, but Vayu cannot be
I should have
denied on that
created a
Hachiman.
world that you do not
There it is,
exist
Seismic
in.
Jer.
Shockwaves, they find a really interesting way, not wasting the ban on Tiamat, but instead taking it for themselves. And we already saw just how much work Adora was putting in game one. If you can do the same thing on a Tiamat, I don't remember the last time I saw a Xarxith drop anything less than like 55,000 player damage on it. What can Adora make happen out of this?
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I love the call. I love
Time
taking
to
you've taken away the 2 best
burn.
picks, arguably, from the Kingslayers that we've seen. You've taken away Xarxith's Tiamat, which is feared league by league in the amateur leagues, And you've taken away Bayu's Hachiman, which I've said it so many times already, but it's just such a standout. Xarxith picking up the Agni and Vayu getting the Rama, though. Here's the problem with characters in Smite, right, Jeer? They still kind of offer similar things. Agni has similar aspects to Merlin, being that artillery mage backline. Merlin, obviously, with more cooldowns, you can get a bit more in your face thanks to that stance switch. But Rama is nearly identical in theory to Hachiman with a slightly different ultimate, but still just as safe.
We were talking about this earlier. Here is the Geb. Hinduman doing a really good job on those engages in game one. Give him a Blink Gebel, and we're going to see some really terrifying things happen to the Kingslayers. I'm really worried for the backline here.
Yeah, me too, especially because Tiamat is a character that can follow up on initiation as a mage in a way that the other mages in the game just cannot really comprehend. And putting that behind a Gebjir, I feel like that just puts this squishy backline, I mean, every backline squishy, but this one especially so, in such a dangerous spot. Because I did mention the safety of Rama Ultimate. If you have to use Rama Ultimate, the problem is, and everyone will know this, is the landing, right? And Geb Tiamat waiting at the bottom of your landing zone as a Rama, I'm good.
Definitely not the best thing you want to see, especially because that team out, like you said, really has that good initiation and follow up. As a mid laner, the only other person that's an actual mage that can do something like that be someone like Zhang Kui, who gets natural protections. But being able to actually jump in while still being an artillery mage, Tiamat having those stance switches allows you to do things in such a unique way that it can be a little bit difficult to get a grasp on their playstyle. So Seismic Shockwaves
Now is the
have a lot of
time.
initiation already.
I'm gonna be I'm we're not even through picks and bans. I'm going to lay it out right now. I'm looking at mid and I'm looking at ADC. Everyone else is great on both these teams. I've said that, so I don't need to explain myself further with it. But this ADC matchup and this mid lane matchup are going to be where this game makes or breaks. Vayu and Aritti is, you know, I love to reference SPL lore, but I'm going to reference SDL lore here. This brings me back to like season one vibes of when we had Remarkable Wolf and Zetan in the same division doing the same types of things and having close games. They're just so evenly matched in certain aspects and different in other aspects in how they play. And it's so fascinating to watch. And it's the same thing with Adora and Xarxith. You know you have two top tier mid laners. And they've switched picks ish. I'm not gonna, pretend that Adora is some Agni main, but they've switched types of characters. And I still expect both of them to go insane. So I don't know if I'll be able to take my eyes off of those lanes.
Though, to be fair, if you did decide to randomly take your eyes off of either of those lanes, it really is just a disservice to how much talent and work we saw coming out of the two lanes just from game one alone, ignoring everything else you know about them. Just looking at one game alone, we saw these two players on
Where are
each
you
team
going?
just playing out of their minds like it's SPL World Finals, just playing to the absolute stars and back. It really is just an incredible clash of titans.
And it makes you really start to wonder where can you go in a game two. And with this Cabrakan pick, I love the Cabrakan because I've always felt like, and maybe this is a hot
Take
take. I
pleasure in the
remember when I was
crushing of
first
one's
learning to
enemies.
cast and I was running Chair 2, I would share this take and sometimes be questioned. I've always liked Cabrakan as almost a defensive support for your backline if things fall apart. I'm not saying that's the ideal way, but when things fall apart, if you're getting dove on repeat and you can't handle it, Cabrakan has a very unique way of being able to disrupt a dive.
Kraken does have a little bit different peel than other actual supports, but you got to keep in mind any support could be a good support considering the fact that the best CC is death. What damage are they going to do if they're gray
True.
screened?
That is a very true point, actually.
I mean, who else is better to just send you straight back and home than Kraken? Who else has that type of raw damage on a support that you can think of just right off the top of your head?
Also worth noting before we move on is that continuing the gentleman's agreement, it's going to be a Nike versus a Kukulkan in that solo lane. So should be a fascinating matchup there. Fascinating matchups across the board, talent across the board, and Jeering, we're going to have one heck of a game in front of us. So let's not wait any longer. We'll see you in just a second. Hello, hello. Game 2 time. Immortal Division, it's week 6. We're getting closer and closer to playoffs, and these are 2 playoff-ready teams. It's Kingslayers. It's the Seismic Shockwaves. I'm AnthonyMalum. I'm joined by Jeeringlamb, and I'm so excited for this game, Jeering. I haven't even said it in a while. I'm going to say it. Let's do it.
Oh, it feels so much better now that you've said it. Not hearing it game 1, it just felt wrong. But now it's back, and everything in the world just feels right again.
We didn't even get to talk about some of the things I wanted to talk about. There's so much to talk about with this set. We started to kind of scrape the surface of the solo lane matchup. Both solo laners did the same things for me, and they did them so well. They were so disruptive to the backline of their opposing team in game number 1. Both of their characters in this game, I would argue, are better at that.
They definitely have a little bit different ways of doing it as the solo laners this time around, but Nike, having Sentinel of Zeus, having a massive health shield, that's going to force the other team to buy relics specifically to counter you. Whereas Kukulkan, if there's anybody who you can think of that just gets in the backline and just starts screaming at you, it really is Kukulkan who does it, if not the best, even if he's not exactly meta. He just really does it well.
And considering the gentleman's agreement, being able to find a pick like that is pretty significant in that kind of scenario. Being able to still find something that can work in the meta. Xarxith are so poked out. That came out of nowhere, but still face tanking it, knowing cooldowns are down for the moment, will not have much longer of safety. They do win the lane pressure, but Xarxith incredibly poked out, worth noting for sure. And if we take a look at relics, we'll taking a look at relics, right? Virtually this time, going for the blink. Well, Axie goes for that beads. It was reversed last time, so Raven does have the threat of blinking in at any given moment. The rest of the relics, quite standard.
Rob does have a little bit of extra safety in the base kit, especially having that backflip kick. Just having regular CC immunity and damage immunity is going to be really helpful for this early dual lane invade.
Virtually lurking around the corner. It will get spotted out, seemingly so, but maybe not actually. Shield buff gets started, they back off, just get minis, and virtually will go on shield buff with the help of Hindu. Aritti takes unfortunate pathing, could lead to a problem. Dash forward from Value and Tatri, Axie here for backup, and it's going to lead to the shield buff going the way of Shockwaves, it appears. But it's always hard to tell. It's going to be Kingslayers, I think. It's hard to tell with shield buff. I never trust it anymore. Because yes, I know it's gray, but it's gray and green on the map. Those are 2 different things, and I don't trust them anymore, because every time I say it, I'm wrong.
It looked like there was a ward placed by Seismic Shockwaves, so I'm going to go ahead and assume that was virtually Eye of the Jungle.
I don't trust you.
Oh, that's...
It despawned anyway. Doesn't matter anymore. We move on.
Xarxith, though, not trusting the jungle running at her.
Does not get rooted, so should be all right virtually. Not going to push the issue any further. I will be looking at virtually to put a bit more pressure on early, because he doesn't have that benefit of being Thor, right? And Jerry, you made a big emphasis on those early ganks coming from Thor with the Anvil of Dawn. Obviously, Raven doesn't do the same thing. So are we looking at Raven to camp out duo and take advantage of maybe Mystic Rush and try to beat Thor to that area? Or are we looking at Raven to kind of more wander around the map like we saw in game 1 from virtually on that Thor?
It's possible we could see either. It's also going to be a very solid plan if Virtually just wants to sit in mid and make sure Xarxith can't really get anything online or safely go for any farm, because, as we saw in game number 1, if anybody on that team can be considered a threat, it's literally everyone on the map.
Yeah. I mean, it's so hard to really to dig deep on the type of analysis, because in amateur leagues, we don't typically get games like that where they are so evenly matched and there is so much talent abroad. So getting to see it is exciting. It's perplexing on how to handle. We talked a lot about how the Shockwaves took advantage of the Kingslayers' micro mistakes and they turned them into hyper advantages. If you're the Kingslayers, how can you clean up micro mistakes because you don't obviously plan to make a mistake that would be classified as being micro?
In the case of the Kingslayers, it's really hard to just say that they made a mistake per se, because it's not like they were just diving Phoenix alone. They were there as a team doing the things that they should. It's just the Seismic Shockwaves recognizing through space and time is going to hurt you a lot harder than anything else is going to hurt me.
We'll see how much this ultimate from the Thor hurts at all, if any. Will not commit to it. The Shockwaves were a bit too safe there, being able to walk to the tower line, so wisely, Axie will look the other way.
That is going to be some valuable use of an ultimate wasted, so Axinyx is going to be a little bit slower on the next rotation, especially since Jotun's Wrath did not come online before it was cast, so with an extra long cooldown, Kingslayers, they can still rotate, but for the jungle it might be a little bit slower this time around.
Xarxith is using the Rain Fire really, really gracefully at those harpies, making sure they're confirmed every single time. And that's now 2 times we've seen them taken away from virtually, which is frustrating, especially because they really do take a lot to kill early on.
They're such a tanky little camp for the side of mid, and especially considering that Xarxith now does have that Tablet of Destinies online.
It was still green, for the record.
But
anyway,
with the Tablet of Destinies, the stacks are going to be really important come late game.
MiniDelvin and Virtually will team up on 12, but a bit too close to tower line to dive deep, and Virtually has eyes on the silver buff. So 12 will look to contest it, try to steal it away, will not be successful at that. So the Seismic Shockwaves here are taking a much more passive approach. They're not forcing the issue so much as we saw early game 1. And the Kingslayer is much of the same, because they were both getting kind of crazy. By 6 minutes, we already had kills on the board in game 1. In game 2, we're taking a preferred approach, I would say. I much prefer this approach to a game because I think it leaves you more room in that mid game. Now, I asked you in game 1, Jeer, if you thought we'd see Gold Furies pulled early, or if you thought the first big fight we were going to see was going to be at Beacon. It kind of ended up being somewhere between. What do you expect for this game?
Since we don't have that Giannis Thor on the same team, it might be a little bit slower of a fight, and especially since we haven't seen a first blood just yet, it's entirely possible that that first big, real team fight is going to happen around the Beacon, but I do expect we'll see at least a couple of scuffles here and there that's either 2-on-2 or maybe even 3-on-3. It's entirely possible, it just depends on do they have the proper wards to spot it out in time, or do they get the jump on the other team?
And if you look at the ward coverage off your point, I mean, both teams have plenty, but the blue coverage on the left side is pretty significant. We just saw one die off by green buff, but they've got every pathway significantly covered. That only really leaves open solo, which they've got deep wards in, so they're prepared for anything crazy there. Shield buff will go the way of the Shockwaves. So the Kingslayer's not able to get it there. And off the ward coverage, so here's my question to follow up on the ward coverage then. How can you play around, especially as a Thor, somebody who relies on that vision to be able to sneak Anvil of Dawns into unsuspecting backlines? How can you play around a lack of vision, which obviously they don't have? But when they die off, when they're being placed, when they're in pocket, you don't want to get caught out using that Thor ultimate just to poke for vision.
It can go well if you catch him off guard like this.
Oh, but he's a little short on the landing. Ultimate was followed up by Vayu, but Axie's able to find the first blood anyway. Vayu dashes forward, looking for Hindu as Virtually picks up Xarxith in the mid lane. Hindu does get the knockup, but it should just be a matter of time. Double kill for Axie, 1 for Virtually in the mid lane. So Jungler's getting some bread here, and Axie making the most of the ultimate, just as I was asking you, and used ward coverage. Knew there was nobody up high on that side of the map, and was able to go aggressive in from the Gold Fury, which is a nice spot to ult. Did come a little short, but it got him there in time to help out Vayu.
Even if the dunk itself isn't perfectly on point and getting triple stuns every time, Anvil of Dawn is still a very interesting ability because of that chain lightning and the damage you can do. just the presence was enough to make the difference.
Virtually could be in some trouble here with 12 doing significant damage. Now has that rage form up, and that's enough to get the pick on Virtually. HiRezHinduman will be here to help out Delvin and make sure the escape and maybe help get a kill because Adora is traveling there. 12's a bit out of range of the beam of Adora, so they're not going to be able to chase all the way. Adora will turn the other way. So an escape for 12 after getting a pick.
That's going to put Kingslayers now 3-1 on the kills board. They do still have a little bit of a gold advantage, and they're trying to extend it as far as possible, but with these extra ganks that they're getting off and the picks they're able to get here, we may end up seeing them up for a little bit of a more early engage than that beacon like we talked about, as Tatri looking to get active around the tower.
The tower is about to drop, so aritti is going to be significantly vulnerable. Actually stepped up for the 1v1. Does get the dash away and had mounted archery, so going to get away. So that third snipe almost changed that, but not going to find a home, and Virtually will be there to ensure no further shenanigans. Same with Hindu, also lurking in the jungle. But Virtually is pushing up a bit far. Will get called off for the moment. Xarxith almost actually got a solo kill on Adora there. You know, something to be said about knowing how to play around a character, and that is a character Xarxith does know well, so would, in theory, be able to play around well.
Yeah, if there's any mid laner that Xarxith knows really well, it's definitely got to be Tiamat. So being able to recognize what the kit does, what it can and can't do, where it's best, and where you can poke holes in it, it's going to give a little bit of an advantage, especially because this Agni has a little bit more consistent poke, those rain fire bombs. So like you said, keeping an eye on the mid lane, definitely going to be a good idea, because even if the player damage isn't sky high right now, I expect it to jump very quickly going into the late game.
There are some characters in the game where if you play them enough, you can even count cooldowns. And being able to do that on characters is such an advantage. It's so overlooked at times. We talk often about high-level skill ceilings and what differentiates once you get there. And that's one of those things, is understanding the little things like that and how you can get any microsecond advantage on your opponent. 11 minutes in, Jeering told you not long ago that there was a gold lead. That gold lead is 2K, 3-1 currently. We're a minute away from Beacon. So there has not been a significant team fight. Will this Beacon be the first fight, Jer? Call it now.
It looks to me like it will be the instigator of this big scuffle.
Simple. I like it. We'll have 30 seconds to see if you're right or wrong. I'll hold you to it, hold you in court about it. I like to do that to Fisher, too. I just miss him. I'm compensating by going through you. Beacon close by, 15 seconds. Seismic Shockwaves have a nice setup for it. It looks like aritti could rotate, but will not, so we'll have value here instead. So maybe the Kingslayers can make something happen after all. They've also got 12 heading down that mid lane, so going to be a 5-on-4 at the Beacon as it spawns up. First in ring were the Kingslayers, but they're backed out and Shockwaves go aggressive. Here comes Axie, which I'm sure the Shockwaves are ready for, but how effective will the landing be? He actually does find a stun as 12 goes for Adora. The damage in response from Shockwaves is really, really good, and the Kingslayers might pay for it, but Virtually was not able to take advantage and Virtually got dropped. Next up could be Tatri, but it could be Adora instead. Both will fall. Now still in ring, we've still got 6 members. Fourth hanging out outside. What can the Kingslayers do with their advantage? If anything, it's getting decimated. Double kill for aritti. Now a 3-on-3, but the health bars are not looking great. And we still have Axie lurking, but the double tap's off the mark, and aritti's got plenty of health, and a HiRezHinduman there as well. Snipes come out, shields available, and both shots miss post-shield. Double tap not good. Dash on the Berserkers, but value was waiting. Meanwhile, Xarxith has been capturing the ring, but she's forced out by MiniDelvin and HiRezHinduman, who are both still there. Xarxith could look to step up with Tatri, but Delvin does a lot of damage right now. The ring is currently favored Kingslayers. It's still the topic of discussion. Xarxith forced out. Enough time has been passed for Virtually to return to the fight. Virtually going to step in the ring and look for somebody. Anybody could be looking at Xarxith, actually. They both get stopped in ring. Now the ultimate comes out from Tatri, who's in trouble, but so is HiRezHinduman, and Value's back. Slam down from Axie and 12, and Value both pick up a kill, but Adora gets one return on Tatri. Still in ring. Delvin trying to keep them out. It's almost gone Kingslayer's way. It will go to Kingslayers. The Shockwaves put up a fight, but not enough.
Shockwaves try and take advantage of every possible little micro advantage that they can. Kingslayers will end up taking the fight in return, but that was just such an extended fight.
Very, very long fight. Gold Fury will go to the Seismic Shockwaves on the steal from Adora. I didn't even get time to breathe, Adora. Out to get me, certainly. The Kingslayers, unfortunately, will get caught slacking at the Gold Fury, which is pretty significant for the Shockwaves, because that brings them still close in gold. That keeps things under control as HiRezHinduman is looking for the solo. Cataclysm auto resets. All right, I respect it. If the rollout had hit, Xarxith would be dead. So lucky day for Xarxith.
That was almost a very big kill for HiRezHinduman, but Xarxith forced to burn both relics just for the support, and now Seismic Shockwaves have more than enough space to go for a Pyromancer, just taking advantage of everything that they can, but Kingslayers, they don't want to give it up for free.
Not at all. Tatri still in pit. 12 here as well, looking for Pyro. Slam down from Axie. Will it be in time? No, it will not. The Shockwaves get it, but on the back end of it, they do get 2 kills. Virtually is gone to Xarxith. Adora could still be a target as 12 and Tatri are running down Adora. The Tectonic Shift will catch Adora in, and now Axie commits 2. They're going to find Adora, but what could be the cost? MiniDelvin does get 12. Could also get Axie if they're not careful, because he's so low, but double tap just in time to get away. So MiniDelvin will get some poke. Left behind on Xarxith, nothing more. Nice escape out from the Kingslayers, only losing the 1 and getting the 2.
They may have lost the objective, but Kingslayers take a very nice team fight off the back end of it. And now, with that extra pressure, they're going to be able to walk in with a wave, take out the mid T1. So all in all, I think Kingslayers played that one quite well.
They're doing it pretty consistently. 15 minutes, 12 to 5. Things have erupted since we were last pretending things were calm. 2K gold lead, but the feel is much different. I always talk about feel, and with the experience difference being significant, and Kingslayers needing a new vibe, they really needed the Emperor's new vibe. Jeer, do you think they're succeeding? And not just do you think they're succeeding, how are they succeeding, and where is it coming from?
So far, they're definitely finding their new groove, and it seems to be with the help of 12-inch and Axinyx getting into the backline and making a lot of beautiful setup. Not only is the CC paramount to the importance of their team fight, but just the presence alone to force Seismic Shockwaves to respect who they are and where they're standing. Having Xarxith and Vayu able to freecast a lot better is just a world of difference. And Seismic Shockwaves, despite what they did in game number 1, just making a crack into a massive gaping hole, Kingslayers really made it work all the time.
Sorry, Tatri was waving. I didn't want to be rude.
Don't worry, Tatri, we see you. Hello. Just, sorry, was in the middle of my sentence.
I couldn't wait. Do you think your sentence is more important to Tatri? Come on.
No.
The players never wave at us. It reminds me when Heavy Warcrier last season was dancing in the Fire Giant pit for like 5 minutes because they were doing a long Fire Giant dance.
Literally a long Fire Giant dance.
Yeah, exactly. Goated behavior, honestly.
It really is.
Where do they go next year? I'm sitting here thinking. I'm looking at the map. I'm trying to get ahead of Kingslayers. You haven't had a lead like this, realistically, this set. Because every time they felt like they had advantage in game 1, the Shockwaves, mostly off the back of Adora, were able to turn things around. And Adora has been notably quiet this game, sitting at 7,000 player damage, 1 and 2, 2 levels behind Xarxith on that Agni. So how can they recreate that magic? How can they get Adora back into a place of relevancy? Especially because we're at that mid-game and still not really where they want Adora to be.
Tiamat is a little bit more of a late-game character since her early pressure doesn't thrive nearly the same as Agni does, so there is still time for Adora to start popping off, but without the utility of that through space and time, it's definitely going to be a lot harder for Adora to get those insane pop-offs that we saw from game number 1.
Gold Fury getting pulled from the Seismic Shockwaves, and the response from Kingslayers, late but not too late. Tectonic Shift and Anvil of Dawn will get the steal onto the Oni Fury. Could get 2 off the back of it. They'll find virtually MiniDelvin with all the shields. Should be okay. They're going to turn on HiRezHinduman on that Geb. Snipes come out. Could catch MiniDelvin off guard, but instead focuses on HiRezHinduman, who just has the world on his shoulders, and the world is a bit too heavy. HiRezHinduman will go 6 feet deep, while Vayu will get the credit, and the rest of the Shockwaves forced off after the Gold Fury steal and a beacon off the back of it. So actually, reverse order of the last beacon we saw, and this time doesn't seem to be any messed up picks from Kingslayers. So a much cleaner sequence of events. They're gonna go right to Pyro and Jeer. That's gonna be a significant gold, not swing, but climb.
It's just going to continue to grow, and unfortunately, Hinduman needs a couple more deadlift reps before he ends up looking like Atlas, so the weight of the world on his shoulders would be a little bit too much, just like you said. So Kingslayer is going to take advantage of that, just like Shockwaves was taking advantage of everything in Game 1. And we see almost a little bit of a reversal of roles here. Kingslayers just playing every macro decision to the utmost and then turning every little micro decision of the Shockwaves into an advantage whenever they can.
And the micro and the macro, we must have said both of those 100 times in game 1. And to see the Kingslayers clean up those small mistakes, to not allow them to happen. We both said it's so hard to do because you don't intend to make the mistake to begin with, but they're finding a way to do it. And I think that's massive for this mid game into late game. And I think it'll be hard, not impossible, but hard for the Shockwaves to really turn things around in it, because it's not like they're playing against a team who's getting this lead by being lucky. I mean, 5,200, 6,500 for experience, 14-5, and it's 20 minutes in. Pretty significant amount of kills, so a lot of gold to go around. Those are not easy things to overcome.
They're definitely not, but we have seen there are some really good rock climbers out there who can go up those uphill climbs pretty efficiently, and given game number 1 that we saw, Seismic Shockwaves have really shown if there's anybody that can turn a little bit of nothing into a whole lot of something, they definitely have the credit to put that on their name.
Pyromancer is currently the area of contest, but it's got a while to go up, so it looks like both teams at this point are looking for any chance to fight. I mean, nothing on the map aside from fire, and farm has already accelerated pretty significantly. I mean, we've got Vayu hitting level 20 at 20 minutes, which is pretty disgusting, and aritti not far behind, and hang on, because the Kingslayers are pulling the Fire Giant, and the Shockwaves could be caught sleeping. Matter of fact, MiniDelvin's backing in the solo lane. Hasn't been spotted out yet, but just not enough damage. They go back on it. Now they're back off again. So indecisions there. We'll see if it costs them. Tatri gets sent back to virtually 12. Now diving deep with nobody there. Tries to jump away. Will get away. A lot of rough decision making there from the Kingslayers, but it's not going to cost them because they weren't caught. But I do question the initial decision making.
It was definitely well-spirited, but unfortunately the Kingslayers have a little bit of hesitance there to go for the Fire Giant, and understandably it is a big objective, but Seismic Shockwaves, they weren't exactly the wiser of that situation, so Kingslayers end up losing their opportunity. I don't want to call it a mistake because that just feels a little bit mean to this team that's playing so well.
For sure, for sure.
It's just not quite the most perfect it could have been.
Had it worked, it would have been genius, and we would have been howling the praises, for sure. But it's one of those scenarios. Next thing up is Gold Fury. Pyro not far behind that, and Beacon also on horizon. Currently a bit of a troublesome 1v1 for Axie. Is forced into that ultimate, but will land down on Virtually. Mystic Rush in response, but Tectonic Shift was waiting, and Virtually is going to be gone, unstoppable for Axie. Now the Kingslayers pop Shell because they might want to continue the fight, and Adora is getting poked out, so the fight is going well for Kingslayers, and the snipes are going to be good, but not good enough thanks to the Aegis from Adora, but he still has to use those abilities. Double kill for Axie, but Adora will clean up 12. So far, I'm not liking the Shockwaves play here in mid. They are going to lose their tier 2, but I am liking the fact that the Kingslayers are a new team in this game. Bothered not by the end of game 1. They've come in swinging 23 minutes in. Going to be a Gold Fury to extend what's becoming a significant gold lead. And the Shockwaves have now gone from being clean, crisp, beautiful, dominant to kind of feeling like a bit of an underdog in this game too.
They went from having such a massive presence in game number 1, and especially off the backs of their backline, just having such a commanding presence across every single battlefield. Even when they're down in a 4v5 against EFG attackers, they're still able to put up a good fight at their Phoenix. But now, Seismic Shockwaves, like you said, they're on the back foot right now, and it's really just a jarring difference from what we saw in game number 1. And to me, it feels more like Kingslayers have just cleaned up those little tiny, tiny little mistakes that they made
Yep.
in game 1 and are just shining now.
Beacon will go to them for free as well, so Beacon dominance for the Kingslayers, which isn't to be overlooked as that's a pretty significant amount of bonus damage. The Titans are going to be going down the duo lane, which is my favorite lane for those Titans to go down, because we always talk about when the Phoenixes go down, Jeer, that it's the good Phoenix to go down. When those Titans march down the duo lane, you don't have a lot of time to make the decision to make the call, but there is a lot of playmaking opportunity that can come from it.
Yeah, because it's so far away from the Fire Giant, if you don't have really good wards on it, it can get dewarded, and you can just sacrifice the Titan to take Fire Giant. And even if you lose Titan and the other team pushes up with it, it gives you a massive possibility of things to happen. But right now, looks like both teams are kind of just saying, forget the Titan, I'm not giving up Fire Giant.
They both have the same fear, it seems, of the other team really taking advantage. Now, I've said this once, I'll say it a million more times. When the two Titans meet, if they are not interfered with, the Chaos Titan will win the fight and push further thanks to having cleave autos. So if nobody goes over there, it will be advantage Chaos, but it looks like we're going to have a split decision. I'm not talking breakfast. We've got 3 heading to duo. 4 Shockwaves, make it 2. 1 is backed, virtually lagging behind. Only Xarxith heading to duo on that Agni. The rest are in mid, so a lot of indecision around these Titans and what to do.
There's definitely a lot of options open, but it feels like Kingslayers right now, not sure which one is the better one to take. Seismic Shockwaves, however, they're not hesitating quite as much. They recognize the Titan as a threat, but Kingslayers seem to finally make up their minds as a team, and now finally taking the Titan down. Seismic Shockwaves are going to be the ones having to come up with an answer for that Titan.
Kingslayers do not have Axie, so they will not look to push too much further. It looks like they just wanted to make sure that the Shockwaves couldn't push with their Titan. Maybe they'll beeline it for Fire Giant. They've got a little bit of time, not a lot. HinduMan's already backed, fearful of the same exact thing. Hindu certainly used to seeing spectator perspective and probably read the room there. So the Kingslayers will book it for Fire Giant, but they will be met by opposition there. So no sneaky play off the back of the Titans. And with the Titan threat gone, 26 minutes in, 16-6 Jeer, we've certainly still got a game in our hands. The Kingslayers did not take advantage of that lead we've been talking about. Shockwave's certainly still in it. We're at our last firefight before EFG. You okay?
I'm honestly kind of worried about what we're going to see here, because both teams have such a scary backline, and the dive coming out from either side is so well coordinated in every situation. It's just fills me with, I don't know what other word to use besides adrenaline. It's both fear and excitement because it's so beautiful, but just what's going to happen, I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of either team.
I would not either. I would want to be comfortable and secure behind my support and doing as told like a good little soldier. Nothing more, nothing less. Virtually did run into Axie and actually in a lot of trouble. Snipes from Vayu. Shell in response, not going to find the last 2 hits. Found the first one. Enough for Virtually to back up, but not enough for a pick. Xarxith actually dashing in on 3 members. Pays no price for it. The Kingslayers will have a man advantage at the Fire Giant. They're going to look to use that advantage to get Pyro. The rest of the Shockwaves will try to get close. HinduMan will get to the ring already. Going to turn into a fight, but the Kingslayers are split. They're going to wait on the ultimate from Axie. HinduMan could be dropped in the meantime. Will be. 12 will get the credit. Now a slam down from Axie. Does not find a home. Aritti able to send out enough poke to send the Kingslayers to the left, looking for Adora, which now leaves them in an awkward spot being in the mid lane, unable to get through. So the Shockwaves could make something happen here. We'll see if they do. Vayu gets a rampage off of 1, but Adora's going to find a kill onto Tatri. Aritti and Adora still standing strong, have Virtually there for help. Mounted archery from Aritti, looking for Vayu, could not find it. Now Aritti dashed on by Xarxith, then gone. Too much damage from the Agni to deal with, but now Adora goes in with Virtually, looking for Axie, going to find the kill. shutdown gold for Virtually. Now he uses Mystic Rush to look, but they split. Adora takes the 1v2, Virtually takes the 1v1. Adora not having good luck, Xarxith gonna walk away, gonna look to help out Vayu. They split, they focus Adora, minions help out. The gas will find it. Now Virtually turns, finds Vayu, gets the shutdown, and they trade in return with Postmortem. So that's gonna mean 4 members down for Shockwaves, 3 down for Kingslayers. Nobody can get anything. We just fought for fun, and I love it.
Seismic Shockwaves actually lost the Geb at the beginning there, so HiRezHinduman respawns and comes back. So it would actually be 3 for 5 in favor of the Kingslayers, but mostly the favor is just that 2 of your members survive, because despite that massive team fight and everything that happened, it is going to be a little bit of a nothing sandwich there, because no objectives were dropped. None of the towers took really any damage for it.
I know!
It's just going to go to an EFG fight now instead of a normal Fire Giant.
I expected that, because it was 26 minutes and they were dancing, so I expected that last... We always see that last firefight kind of be a priority, because you want to get one off the board before you get the EFG, so you can kind of double your advantages. 30 minutes is going to hit. EFG on the board. 7k gold. Experience starting not to matter, but still heavily favoring the Kingslayers. 21-9. The Kingslayers not to be trifled with. The Shockwaves trying to continue their hot streak, as we put it last week in their set. And I don't know... I don't know how they do this, aside from capitalizing on mistakes again, but that requires the Kingslayers making mistakes.
That implies that either of these teams really make mistakes. Rather, the best thing you can do is just unoptimized plays, because that just feels a little bit closer to the truth. All that they're doing, it feels so wrong to call it a mistake with how well that they're playing together.
Delvin getting a lot of focus, double stunned out, but able to jump away. Just so tanky and so many shields available. Still hasn't stacked that Pathetic, by the way. Just want to point that out at 28. So probably trying to do that, honestly. Rest of Kingslayers go to the left, 12 to the right. Hindu is dealing with some pokes. So is Delvin. Delvin's already down to half. Now fire bombs hit Aritti, and Aritti's down to a quarter. So it's going to be an initiation from the Kingslayers to look to make use of that poke. Snipes from Vayu, find nobody quite yet. Excuse me, that was actually the ultimate from Axie. Xarxith gonna find Delvin, who was just hanging out in that mid lane, unable to get away. A lot of poke finds the way of Kingslayers, but they're gonna group up anyway and push forward down the mid lane, looking to actually maybe end the game. They've got so much stepped up. Snipes from Vayu don't find a good home thanks to the overhead kick from Virtually, and the Kingslayers will step back. They'll take their 1 kill, and they'll take some time to relax. I got mixed up because I saw Axie ult and I thought it was Vayu, but honestly, Jeer, I would have liked a Vayu ultimate to try to confirm the Aritti kill when I thought it happened.
It almost could have been, but it was just a little bit too far for them to make it. Kingslayers do manage to get the power out of it, so at the end of the day, they do get something out of that fight, so it's a little bit more to eat.
12 is stuck in between so many, and Aritti will make 12 pay. That's 1 pick for the Seismic Shockwaves, and they're going to chase down the 4 remaining members, but a nice wall does slow down the advance. Now a nice stun will help out too, so the Shockwaves forced to back up and reconsider their actions. But they wanted blood. There was blood in the water there, and they were compounding forward, trying to make it happen. Instead, it's going to turn into a reset and what will probably turn into another EFG dance.
Kingslayers try to get 1 advantage, and unfortunately this time they just got a little bit too active. Seismic Shockwaves pushing them back.
Vayu gets caught in the stun. Virtually might be able to clean it up, but has to get past 2, and HiRezHinduman's very low, and Xarxith will clean up HiRezHinduman. Rampage for her on the Agni. Now Tatri still remaining, still trying to create an opening for Xarxith to get back into it, but it's going to be tough to find a nice spot. Snipes from Vayu look great, and it's going to be a double kill for Xarxith. It's going to find Adora with some help from Axie, the Eye in the Sky. Now MiniDelvin going to try to clean up Axie, but having the same problems of getting past Tatri, who's now setting up Virtually. Xarxith could look to go back in. Axie walls off the corner. Rain fire, not going to quite hit on Virtually, but the Kingslayers are still going to step up forward. Xarxith's still going to go aggressive. Going to be a delayed triple kill for Xarxith to make an unstoppable Agni. Kingslayers drop 3 again, but I still don't know if they're going to be able to get the Fire Giant, Jeer, and that could be the priority, but no, it's not. It's MiniDelvin thanks to the burn. That's a delayed Quadra for Xarxith, and she's playing like she wanted more than that, but now she's turned into the defense for Vayu and 12 to start up the EFG. She's going to head back to it. Aritti could be the main contest here. It's down to half health. Hindu won't be far behind him. Down to a quarter. Vayu still in pit. Xarxith still there with good damage. Tatri arrives for the defense. They get off of the Fire Giant. They look for Aritti. Xarxith gonna dash. No dash forward. Holds dash. Goes back to fire. It's still low. It's gonna be close. Kingslayers get the Fire Giant. HinduMan now stuck after trying to get the steal. That's the 5th kill in a row for Xarxith in a short time frame, making her divine. This Agni cannot be stopped.
The Kingslayers right now just looking absolutely beautiful. An extended fight, but Xarxith with a delayed Quadra, almost a penta, forced Aritti to hop on the horse and get out of dodge immediately. And frankly, I would be just as terrified as you.
The aggressive positioning from Xarxith was so impressive and virtually wanted to try it for himself, but not quite have the luck. Can the snipes find virtually? No, the Barra backstep was enough for virtually to get away. The Shockwaves will follow suit and step back. Not looking to quite full defend, but Delvin changes his mind, dives in, blinks in, ultimate follows. They've got the Kingslayers low, but they do lose the Phoenix. Now a slam from Axie. Can he find it? Virtually going to get popped by 12. This is a great opening for Kingslayers. They're going to step into the throne room because they've got the man advantage. Adora steps deep, looking for Tatri. Delvin back in base to heal. Mounted archery, going to find the kill on Tatri. And look how low the rest are. Adora going to find Vayu. Kingslayers still playing aggressive, maybe too aggressive. Can the Shockwaves make them pay? Going to be another kill for Aritti. The rest of Kingslayers have to go retreat, and the Shockwaves are going to follow out. Going to roll out, and Axie going to get dropped. Double, Adora, Aritti. One more left. It's Xarxith, and the Shockwaves have successfully defended, and I don't know how they did it, Jeer.
All the damage was just too much for the Kingslayers to handle. All that aggression will not pay off. As we said earlier, keep an eye on the late game of Tiamat, and right now it is the top of the team, only a little bit behind Xarxith, but if it keeps going like this, Seismic Shockwaves are easily going to turn it around, and Xarxith can only do so much as just this one lone Agni.
It's going to cost him a Phoenix. That's
is.
a great play from Hindu. I mean, Hindu could even die for this, but it's going to cost him a Phoenix. I don't think it's going to cost them more than that. It will just cost them a HinduMan. Xarxith will get it. that took Moxie, and I love it.
Oh, HinduMan.
To recall spam over somebody with a high-res name is the most respectable thing I've seen in a comp game in a long time.
No, that wasn't back spamming. That was her back getting stopped by archers.
Let me call it how I see it. Let me have fun. I was making Xarxith out to be this badass, just killed HinduMan, recall spammed. Instead, you got to point out the archers. Minion 37 ruining her fun. You know, fun.
Okay, both of which are just as funny.
Yeah. All right, back to game. 37 minutes, 29-15. Kingslayers get stopped from ending the game, shockingly so. And you can see the chart starting to sprint down. Shockwaves bringing the gold back. Again, experience does not really matter at this point. It's that gold you want to look at. Only HinduMan is left to hit level 20. But gold is the big thing. Kills are the biggest thing. They're looking for Delvin. Can't find it. Adora jumped in. Thought better of it. Steps back. 12 could still be in trouble. The rest of Kingslayers show up. Is it too little too late for 12? Shockwaves step up. Adora tries to find a knock-up. Can't quite do it. In the sky is Axie. Look for the landing. Look, if they do land, they do go aggressive. Might not be the case. Will not be. No, nothing diving yet. Xarxith has dived a lot to be a mage. Playing a lot like Tiamat, ironically, Jeer. And when Xarxith isn't doing that, the Kingslayers play a much more defensive style until Xarxith starts to go in, and then we start to see Tatri go crazy.
To be fair, Xarxith does still have that EFG around her belt, so when you're doing that much damage as an Agni, when you can literally dash in against 3 and force them to back off in terror, which, to be fair, completely understandable, I would too, but when you can do that with an Agni who doesn't have CC immunity in the base kit, that creates so much space and opportunity for the Kingslayers to do so much more against the Shockwaves.
With 40 minutes around the corner, Shockwaves have shown that they can win a fight. They've got it between Adora and Aritti. How do they make it clean? How do they find their way past Tatri and Xarxith? And how do they deal with 12 diving their backline?
Right now, the issue is Xarxith is just able to fire over those walls as 12-inch and Axie. 12-inch goes in, distracts him, causes a lot of disruption. Axie just pops up into the sky, dunks on their heads, and just completely disrupts the entire course.
Virtually blinks in on Vayu, but Vayu is able to survive the Mystic Rush. Kingslayers will try to respond, and they respond well, but they get stopped, and Axie gets popped. MiniDelvin gets the credit. Virtually now alone with 12, Aritti shows up for help as the rest of Seismic Shockwaves are pushing up mid. 12 will clean up Virtually, but Aritti's going to find it, and they got to be careful because now it's 4-on-3, and the Seismic Shockwaves are really pushed up. They're going to have the help of Fire Waves, but there is a lot of towers up, so the Shockwaves wisely will step back and look to the EFG. Even if they tried to end there, there's so many towers up that the tankiness of that Titan would have been too much.
Xarxith would have had a little bit too much time with 3 towers still standing. That Agni really just cannot be ignored. You would have to get the deicide before you can try and end, so Shockwaves definitely taking the safer call here.
Rama Snipes are available for the potential steal of this Fire Giant. Vayu's in the sky. Fire Giant's going to be a close call. Snipes going to land, but not in time. Shockwaves get the Fire Giant, and they keep Delvin safe after playing defense. That's going to be an EFG on 4 members, and we always say the most important 2, mid and ADC. Well, they've got it. Aritti and Adora have EFG. Kingslayers can just look to defend. They do have their mid Phoenix back up, so mid Phoenixes will even out. Tower advantage still goes way of Kingslayers. It's 40 minutes. 30-17, another long one. And a while ago, we were all but writing off the Shockwaves, and they've come all the way back and made this a game. They've made it a war. They still got to finish it, though, and the Kingslayers still want to force a game 3, surprisingly enough. You said it in game 1 at the end. They're playing like this is playoff Smite.
And it really is truly a Herculean effort from every single person on the team. Both sides are just playing to their heart's content. Virtually, unfortunately, not having quite the same pop-off game that we saw last time, but still making more than enough space for the rest of the team to do everything that they want and more. And personally, especially for somebody subbing up the division, Virtually is doing a fantastic job of really just distracting them and keeping them on that wild goose chase, still keeping about the same damage as Axie. So really just props to Virtually for this beautiful play.
Gorgeous. Gorgeous the whole time. And like you said, playing up, I mean, the deaths don't tell the story of what we've seen. They really do not. They tell the story of an aggressive player, certainly, but no more than that. Kingslayers are now forced to their Phoenix. The Shockwaves are on Phoenix line. They do have a 4-1 split. Going to have to be respected by the Kingslayers. Virtually could certainly clean up a below half-health Phoenix. Virtually actually stepping up to do it. Overhead kick used. Shield available. That was a distraction. That was a time for the Kingslayers to deal with the Shockwaves as they dove in, but it's going to cost MiniDelvin to the Shockwaves. And Axie, also up in the sky, could look for Virtually, but the landing was off the mark. That could leave him vulnerable. Gets caught, but Mystic Rush off the mark. And look at the police. They're all on the way to deal with Virtually. He's going to get dropped by Vayu. Shockwaves use that moment to step up and clean up the duo side Phoenix, and the retreat begins. So a bit of a guerrilla warfare there from the Shockwaves, and it does work out. They lose 2, but they do get the Phoenix that was the ultimate goal, which is the good Phoenix.
Not to mention, both the mid and the ADC still have that EFG around their belt, so Seismic Shockwaves still has some really solid push potential once their dive comes back up. And the Kingslayers, despite having a really solid defense, do still have a little bit of cracks in their base. That's going to be important to note because 2 towers now are down. Only the solo side tier 2 tower stands, and that only at quarter HP. And if Aritti gets on that even without minions, I'd say that's 2, maybe 3 autos tops.
With Pyro gone, with 3k pots in hand, with all the damage Kingslayers can do, is there a world where you take a page at the Shockwaves book and you try some kind of crazy play here? Try to keep the Shockwaves on their toes? Because You know, usually crazy plays are the stuff of dreams and highlights, but with Shockwaves, it really is commonplace for them to make a crazy play to try to keep their opponent off guard. Do you see a world where, I guess, one, will the Shockwaves do that, and two, can the Kingslayers do that to try to throw off the Shockwaves?
They could certainly try it, but the issue is if the Shockwaves are able to adapt to it in a relatively timely manner, the Kingslayers are going to be completely off their regular footing, and Seismic Shockwaves could just throw one big swing and take them completely down to the ground. So Kingslayers, while they could potentially go for it, it may not work as Seismic Shockwaves go exactly for that, setting up a trap in the jungle to try to catch them off guard.
They've got the time to do it. I mean, this is their game at the moment. They've pushed it all the way back with that duo Phoenix down. They've got to respect it, and the Kingslayers know that. You can tell they're just sitting, waiting their turn out. And the Shockwaves are able to buy their time. They're gonna have to be contest at this EFG. They know the Kingslayers won't let it go for free, so they will be able to defend. But we do have a pause coming out, so we'll have some seconds to breathe here while we try to figure out where to go next. I think the story of both of these games has been just the kill potential that leads to the micro mistakes, that leads to the advantages. And the Shockwaves are just so good at finding an opening and breaking through. I mean, it's Kool-Aid Man behavior.
It really is Kool-Aid Man behavior, and just like you see in the logo, Seismic Shockwaves, if they see a wall that the Kingstars are trying to put up, they have more than enough strength to just punch right through it. And I've wanted to mention this for a minute now, but there's just been so much going on, it's hard to get the right time. Looking at just the numbers of the game, Kingstars ahead in kills, up in the 30s, Seismic Shockwaves don't even have 20 yet. Kingstars are ahead in gold, but right now, Seismic Shockwaves are in the driver's seat. So looking at numbers alone does not tell the story of this game. And it really comes down to the fact that these are two teams who are bringing so much talent together. And when they play as a team, they become so much more than what each of them are individually capable of that it's truly just the dream of any team game to make this happen.
As Jeering said, those are the numbers. The rest of the numbers are 32-17 at 45 minutes. And EFG has just respawned. We're back from pause. Virtually diving for Vayu, but this could be a misplay if it's not handled well. Virtually forced to use that Mystic Rush to escape, but the snipes are good from Vayu, and Axi's up in the sky to try to follow up with more. Gonna dive in the back line and find a hit onto two. Aritti down below half. Adora jumps down onto Axi to try to separate things and save their team, and it works out fairly well. Rollout from Hindu used as well, so the Kingslayers begin the chase. They begin the hunt. Prey in sight. Can they find Hindu? Yes, they do. Double kill, but delayed for Vayu. Shockwaves down to 3 members. Kingslayers still standing 5 strong. Now decision time. You've got fire minions in, EFG up, and possibly in sight. What will you do? Adora gonna take on the world and find Axi still alive. Has MiniDelvin for backup. MiniDelvin goes forward, gets aggressive, and does enough damage to save Adora. Aritti also up, and Adora finds a double kill from over the wall. And the Kingslayers lose 2, and they did take a lot of Titan poke in the meantime. Could also lose their Phoenix. Have to back up. They've got to reset, but they're still being chased out. Xarxith gonna deal with Aritti and MiniDelvin, Tatri too, and Adora actually coming from the mid lane. Will they be in time to save the duo lane Phoenix? No, they will not. So no Phoenix on the left-hand side. MiniDelvin still diving in. Wall used to keep Aritti away. Xarxith and Tatri will escape, but the damage, Jeer, the damage is done.
The Seismic Shockwaves recognizing just how deep the Kingstars were trying to dive and took advantage of it. You've said this multiple times now. The Kingstars, they'll make these little micro mistakes, and Seismic Shockwaves are turning it into something even bigger. And right now, the Kingslayers recognizing they have a very serious problem on their hands, and if they don't immediately fix that problem that they've been having right now, the Seismic Shockwaves are going to take this game and end it very quickly.
Yeah, you can't put it any more plain. Shockwaves on the EFG. It's at half health. We're at 47 minutes. Tatri and Xarxith both ready to steal. They've got the help of 12, but they got to get in the pit if they're going to do it. It's down to 20%, down to 10. Going to go to the Shockwaves. They get the EFG. Now they turn. Delvin's caught out. Xarxith too. Virtually is on Xarxith. They can't afford that. The Kingslayers cannot afford to have that happen, but it happens anyway, and Delvin got the credit. Adora going to find a rampage off of Tatri. Double kill on 12, and the Shockwaves have done it again. The fist through the wall, and now they're heading down solo. They're going to send Hindu mid. They've already got the duo Phoenix down. They're going to take the solo Phoenix. They've only got 2 people to go through, and they have EFG. It's an impossible task that Axie and Vayu are faced with, but they do have the damage to do it. Vayu's got crit online, has that ornate arrow. They've got damage. They just got to play it right. Fire minions from Duo will come first. They got to clear that wave, but Hindu was playing it back deep. Titan down to half health. It's getting lower. They're on it. Adora's on it. They got to play Fountain. They can't play it enough. The Seismic Shockwaves come all the way back and somehow make this set a 2-0. You saw the logo. You heard me say it. It's a 2-0 for the Seismic Shockwaves, continuing their climb up the leaderboard, ready to challenge Wild Inferno. And they did it in style in Game 1, and in Game 2, they did it with grit. They really pushed through, and they dealt with so much. I mean, Xarxith hit 58,000 damage. Jeer, I always like to keep my post game simple. Give me your improvements needed from both teams and what to look forward to.
So far, we've seen beautiful play on both sides. Kingslayers, unfortunately, getting just a little bit too trigger happy on the dive, but the Seismic Shockwaves punishing them for it beautifully. If they can just cinch together a little bit of those early rotations to set themselves up going into that mid game, by the time they hit level 10, they would look pretty much unstoppable. And frankly, after just watching just those 2 games, it looks like they're already well on their way to reaching that goal, and I am truly scared for anybody who tries to get in their way.
As you should be, and for our friends at the Kingslayers, fix micro mistakes. It's tough, but you can do it. My name is AnthonyMalum. I was joined by Jeeringlamb. We had iNooblet on production, and we'll see you next time on the Smite Draft League with more action as we get closer to playoffs.